Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Just imagine Deku, not with just one quirk, but many. In a world full of powerful heroes and dangerous monsters, how far would he rise? Welcome to What If Deku Had Multiple Quirks in One Punch Man, World's Strongest Hero. Stay tuned, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more awesome content. Now let's start the story. For the residents of City A, the day started nice and peaceful as the children were dropped off at school while their parents headed off to work. All seemed right with the world, until a massive explosion suddenly erupted in the middle of the city, destroying buildings and killing thousands of people in a split second. People from miles away stumbled or fell as the shockwave from the explosion hit everything in the surrounding area, shaking nearby buildings and shattering windows. Once the explosion subsided, a massive crater was all that was left of what used to be a residential area in City A. Standing in the center of the crater was the source of the explosion, which so happened to be a mysterious being who was a large, purple hairless humanoid with two rounded antennas on its head and had a muscular body. The mysterious being took in his surroundings in disgust before he flew up into the air in a great burst of speed. Once high in the air, the mysterious being conjured up 4 orbs of pure energy before launching them throughout the city, destroying even more buildings and killing all who reside in them. Hero Association HQ, Control Room. Inside the control room of the Hero Association headquarters, everyone was trying to contain the situation when a nearby explosion caused by the mysterious being made the building shake. "It's closing in," shouted a console operator. Another operator turned away from his blaring console, looking for answers. "Damn, so who's available?" "We have confirmation that Lightning Max and Smile Man are on their way," exclaimed a female console operator who inwardly hoped that the 2 A-class heroes could defeat the mysterious being. City A. Lightning Max and Smile Man were just 2 of the 31 heroes who were lying among the pile of rubble, having been effortlessly defeated by the mysterious being who continued to wreak havoc across City A uninterrupted. "Mommy, Daddy," cried a little girl, standing on her lonesome in the middle of the ruins that once made up a part of City A, so distracted in her grief of losing both her parents that the little girl didn't notice the mysterious being walking towards her from behind. The mysterious being studied the crying little girl for a moment before he stretched out his rapidly bulging arm with the intent to squish the girl like a grape. With an evil chuckle, the mysterious being clenched his enormous hand around the little girl, but was bewildered when he didn't feel the human girl's bones snap or see her blood squirt out. The mysterious being opens his hand, and to his surprise, he doesn't see any sign of the little girl, dead or alive. Sensing something, the mysterious being glanced to his right and saw the still living little girl with another human who had somehow managed to grab the girl and take her away in the split second that it took him to clench his fist. "You're a fast one," stated the mysterious being who was aware that the human moved so fast that he didn't see them. "Who are you?" The little girl stopped crying as she stared up at the hero with tearful eyes wide in shock and awe. It's you." The hero smiled down at the little girl who he gently lowered to the floor. "Don't you fear." The hero stood up to his full height of 7 feet 4 inches and turned to face the mysterious being, showcasing his costume, which was made up of a full-body green jumpsuit that stretched along his muscular build, a red belt, beige gloves which covered the full length of his arms, red boots, knee pads that extended down his legs, and a diamond-shaped respirator which hung by his neck. The man himself had a short mess of dark green curly hair that stuck at odd angles around his head, green eyes, and a set of 4 symmetrical freckles in diamond formations with one on each cheek. His cheeks have lost much of their roundness, having somewhat sharpened over the years. Unique in appearance, but it didn't turn away from his attractiveness. "For Deku is here," declared Izuku Midoriya, or rather, the S-Class Rank 1 hero, Deku. The mysterious being simply looked down at the hero in annoyance. "Deku? As in useless?" "You're kidding," asked the mysterious being in doubt. "What kind of half-assed name is that?" "Mine is far superior, for I am Vaccine Man," declared the mysterious being who passionately slapped his chest. "The Earth is a single living organism. You filthy humans are nothing but a disease-causing bacteria, eating away at her precious life force," exclaimed Vaccine Man with self-assured passion. At the same time, the mysterious being began to transform as his muscles bulged, spikes grew all along his body, and 2 long, but sharp tusks stretched out from his jaw. "Why do they always feel the need to tell me all about their backstory?" wondered the smiling hero, Izuku Midoriya, who watched on as Vaccine Man quickly grew taller until he got to the point where the mysterious being was now a towering monster of muscle, spikes, and razor-sharp claws. "In order to wipe out humanity and the evil civilization built on her surface, the Earth in her infinite wisdom has given birth to me," declared Vaccine Man, who finally transformed into his true form. "And I shall begin my purge of humanity by killing you." roared the transformed mysterious being who lunged at Deku with the intent to rip him apart. Unfortunately for Vaccine Man, he failed to grasp the fact that he wasn't facing off against any hero like the ones he already defeated. No, he was facing off against the number one hero in the entire world. If not for you causing so much death and destruction yourself, you might have had a point. Faster than the mysterious being could grasp, Deku disappeared in what appeared to be a bolt of green lightning and appeared beneath Vaccine Man, who had yet to realize his impending death. Izuku reared his right arm back, which was crackling with emerald green energy that resembled lightning, a result generated whenever he used the power of his quirk, One for All. Full Cowl, Spark Punch. In the 10th of a second, Deku uppercuts Vaccine Man with more than enough power to rip the head off of the mysterious being. To the little girl who watched the number one hero defeat the mysterious being with practical ease, it looked like Deku just killed the monster with an actual punch made up of green lightning. Vaccine Man's large monstrous head was launched up into the air faster than a speeding bullet and disappeared from view, having flown higher than the human eye could naturally see. Even more spectacular was that Deku's punch didn't just kill the powerful monster, but the power unleashed from his fist dispersed the rising smoke and clouds that filled the sky, leaving nothing behind but clear blue skies for all of City A to enjoy. The little girl's eyes sparkled in awe as she watched the number one hero, Deku, turn towards her with the same caring smile he was famously known for. The sunlight that shined down on the hero only made him look more angelic in her eyes. So distracted in her awe, the little girl didn't notice or care when the headless corpse of Vaccine Man fell over with a loud thud. Hero Association HQ. Control Room. We can't thank you enough for your help, Deku. We would have been in big trouble if not for you, thanked Bearded Worker, bowing his head in respect for the number one hero. Even after defeating the dragon-level monster, Deku went out of his way to bring back the 31 injured heroes and any civilians who were injured during Vaccine Man's rampage. They were all quickly transferred to the infirmary so they could be treated by the best doctors available. Most of the other S-class heroes would have just left after defeating the mysterious being. Despite being 25 years old and officially classed as the strongest hero, Izuku Midoriya could still get a bit bashful when given praise. It was nothing. Just doing my duty, that's all, answered Midoriya, who waved off Bearded Worker's praise with an embarrassed chuckle. The smiling Bearded Worker raised his head, elated that they have someone like Deku to protect them from global threats. Still, you have our gratitude. His colleagues all showed their agreement by happily nodding or verbally praising Deku. Izuku chuckled with an embarrassed blush. I guess I have no other choice but to say you are all welcome. Now then, if that's all, I best get going. The cities won't patrol themselves, he said, and with a wave, the hero walked out of the control room to continue his patrol. As he strolled down the hallway while politely greeting the Hero Association employees who all showed their gratitude to him, Izuku felt like reminiscing about the life he had made for himself. To think that this is my life now. 10 years ago, he had been nothing more than a quirkless loser who fantasized about becoming a hero like every other kid. Now, he was the number one ranked hero in the entire world, having held the title ever since the Hero Association established itself 3 years ago. For the 7 years before that, he had been fighting criminals and mysterious beings as a vigilante. Back in his original world, vigilantism was considered a serious offense. At first, he had been worried about being potentially named a criminal by the world governments for performing his vigilante acts, not that it would have stopped him from going out and saving people. Imagine his surprise when he found out that not only was he not getting in trouble for his vigilantism, but the government was encouraging him to continue. Being able to fight toe-to-toe with monsters was probably what convinced the politicians to look the other way. In the past 15 years, the frequency of mysterious being appearances had increased, with some being much more dangerous than others, which would explain why vigilantism was encouraged. There was only so much the police and military could do against monsters that could withstand gunfire and crush tanks with their bare hands. So Izuku and others who could defeat monsters on their own were welcome to do so by the world governments. A couple of years later, Izuku's dream came true once he officially became the number one ranked hero in the entire world, just like All Might. I only wish All Might and Mother could see this, he thought, missing the two most important people in his life, especially his mother. 10 years was too long to be without the woman who single-handedly raised him. Stepping out of the Hero Association headquarters, Izuku looked up at the clear blue skies and blocked the sunlight from hitting his eyes. Reminiscing made him remember how he ended up in this world in the first place. 10 years ago, USJ. Izuku Midoriya couldn't believe they all managed to survive an actual attack from villains. Class 1, A's trip to the USJ facility was intended to be used as an example for a training exercise on how they would save civilians during different kinds of natural disasters, like landslides, fires, and floods. Instead, the whole trip had become far scarier and more dangerous than anyone could have predicted. Villains attacked the USJ facility intending to kill the symbol of peace, All Might. Unfortunately for everyone involved, All Might didn't make it to the class on time like he was supposed to. With their main objective unavailable, the villains then turned their aggression onto the class of first-year hero students. There were only 2 pro heroes to fight the villains, and while Eraserhead did a good job in taking out many of the small-time villains, he was eventually beaten by the villain who had severed hands all over his body, and the giant monster with the exposed brain. 13 was also defeated by a villain who had a warp quirk, which left the first-year students to fend for themselves. All of Class 1A battled villains all across the USJ facility, but before anyone could be severely hurt, All Might showed up just in time. What small-time villains that remained were quickly taken out by All Might. Witnessing the symbol of peace defeat the villains in so little time filled the students of Class 1A with hope at a time that it was badly needed. That hope wavered when All Might battled against the monster that the leader called a Nomu. To the shock of those who witnessed the fight, the Nomu could not only keep up with All Might, but it could hurt him as well. The leader of the villains explained that Nomu possessed multiple quirks, as hard as it was to believe, including a shock absorption quirk which nullified all the damage done by All Might's punches. All seemed lost until All Might showed them what it was like to go plus ultra and went beyond his limit. In a clash between titans, All Might came out victorious after he launched Nomu out through the ceiling of the facility with one powerful smash. As expected by the number 1 hero, All Might was victorious, but he didn't come out unscathed. The tough fight had left All Might weak, which wasn't missed by the villain leader. The villain tried to attack the weakened symbol of peace, but Izuku moved to stop him and nearly got himself killed in retaliation. Thankfully, the rest of the teachers arrived just in the nick of time. Before the villain leader could kill him, Snipe managed to shoot him several times, forcing the injured leader to teleport away with the warp quirk villain. With the Nomu and the villains finally defeated, Izuku dropped down to his knees and let out a breath of air in relief. The successor of All Might could never have predicted that he would nearly die so early in his hero career, especially not while he was still just a first-year student. That was the unpredictable hero's life for you. Fucking brats. Izuku turned towards the source of the voice and widened his eyes when he saw that one of the unconscious villains had woken up. The shirtless villain was lithe when compared to the rest of his comrades, and from the way he was supporting his bruised right arm, he appeared to be injured, likely caused by Eraserhead during his beatdown on the small-time criminals. That was good. It meant Izuku could probably apprehend the criminal on his own without resorting to hurting himself by using one for all. Just as Izuku was about to take on the criminal, he stepped back when he saw the man aim his hand toward Midoriya, who noticed how the limb glowed a sinister shade of red. The 1A student didn't know what the villain's quirk was, so he kept his distance just in case. "Die, you little shits!" roared the villain before he fired a red beam of energy from his uninjured hand. But not at Midoriya. With the villain weak and injured, his aim faltered, so instead of firing his energy beam at Midoriya, it instead flew towards the back of an unsuspected Tsuya Azui who was too busy celebrating their victory to notice the beam of energy heading towards her. Again, Izuku's feet were moving on their own without needing to think, just like he did when he tried to save Kachin from the sludge villain. All he knew was that Tsuya was in danger, and he was the only one there to save her. "Midoriya?" asked Tsuya, turning towards Izuku, who she saw was running towards her in what looked like a panic. She didn't get an answer, for Izuku roughly shoved her away. "What are yo dash?" Tsuya started before her eyes widened in horror when she saw a red energy beam hit her classmate, exactly where she was just standing. She realized that if Midoriya hadn't shoved her aside, she would have been hit instead. "Our ribbit!" she croaked out, watching in horror as the light from the villain's quirk washed over Midoriya's body, which then started to break down into particles of light that quickly faded away, starting with his legs. You'd think that after 10 years of bullies severely beating him and breaking his limbs whenever he used his quirk, Izuku would be used to pain by now. Sadly, the pain from being hit with whatever the villain's quirk was made all those past experiences feel like puppy kisses in comparison. It was like every cell in his body was being pierced by a sharp needle at the same time. Yet, seeing Tsuya looking up at him from the floor, alive and well, was enough to make the pain worth it. He might not get to grow up and become the hero he always wanted to be, but knowing that he managed to save at least one person was enough for him to die in peace. He just wished he could have said goodbye to everyone first. And so as he accepted his fate, Izuku Midoriya closed his eyes one last time and allowed himself to succumb to darkness as the last piece of his existence faded away into particles of light. Much to Izuku's surprise and great relief, he didn't die that day. Instead, he had been seemingly transported to an alternate world, so much like his own, and yet so different. Izuku pondered if the villain responsible for his conundrum understood what his odd quirk could do, doubtful as it may be. The villain probably thought that it just disintegrated anything he used it on. In the end, Izuku survived. But with no way to return home, he had to make do with the one he found himself in. A world that was both familiar and incredibly strange. Instead of countries, this Earth had just one large landmass which was filled and separated with gigantic cities, which were named after the letters of the alphabet. Not the most creative, but it did keep things simple. However, the most shocking difference between his world and this one was that humanity hadn't evolved to the point of having quirks. Where his home world only had a quirkless population of 20%, this world was 100% quirkless, a fact that both baffled and amazed the once quirkless man. While there may be such large differences between the two Earths, there were still some similarities that couldn't change, alternate world or not, such as criminals that could be found in every city. Yet, criminals were considered nothing more than nuisances when compared to the real threat: monsters. They were also known as mysterious beings, seeing as how humanity still had no clue on how they first came to be. What they did manage to learn was that some species of monsters have lived unnoticed on Earth for millennia, but the most common kind of monsters were those who were once human but abnormal cell reactions would transform them into monsters either because of a bad habit or a burst of dissatisfaction. It reminded Izuku a lot about quirks, but these transformations could occur at any time and always result in the person turning bloodthirsty. These mysterious beings varied in strength, either weak enough to barely be a threat to a group of civilians or powerful enough to threaten the safety of multiple cities, such as Vaccine Man. The first couple of years that he spent in this strange world were spent moving from city to city, learning to better control his quirk, One for All. Since he didn't have access to Recovery Girl or any suitable ID, he had no choice but to resort to using One for All sparingly until he could better control the quirk's immense power without having to break his limbs. Thankfully, trying to use One for All sparingly led to him creating Full Cowl, a technique that allowed him to spread the flow of power from One for All over his body instead of focusing it all on one part of his body like he usually did. At first, he had only been able to implement 5% of his quirk's total power without damaging his body, but after 2 years of training and fighting both villains and mysterious beings, he learned to master One for All to its fullest. For 7 years, Izuku spent much of his time fighting villains and mysterious beings as a vigilante, since neither the police nor the military could fight against monsters that were demon-level threats or higher. However, his time spent as a vigilante changed 3 years ago after he saved the grandson of the multimillionaire, Agoni, from a mysterious being who went by the name Crablet. Agoni was so moved by the heroic act that he used his wealth and connections to create the Hero Association and the National Superhero Registry, therefore creating an organization that could directly fight against the threat of mysterious beings. Izuku was the first to join the Hero Association and did so under the hero name, Deku. The next 3 years were spent defeating dangerous criminals and monsters of all different shapes and sizes. It didn't take him long for him to rise in the rankings until he eventually became the #1 hero in the world. After a lifetime of others telling him that he couldn't be a hero, Izuku was brought to tears during the official ceremony, having finally made his dream a reality. Shaking himself out of his head, Deku bent his knees and with a mighty leap, he went into the air, flying over the high-rise skyscrapers of City A. Another surprising factor that Izuku eventually learned about One for All was that the quirk carried the vestiges of its previous wielders. As well as that, all their quirk factors had merged with One for All's core, providing Izuku with the quirks of all his predecessors. Not including One for All, he now had access to 6 other quirks. One such quirk was Float, which belonged to All Might's predecessor and mentor, Nana Shimura. He was currently using said quirk to help him fly through the sky like a green comet. Deku stopped in midair when suddenly, and without warning, an explosion erupted a few miles in the direction of City D. At the center of the explosion stood one of the largest mysterious beings Deku had ever seen. The mysterious being resembled a man without skin and had bone-like armor covering parts of his body. Since the monster didn't have any skin, Izuku could see its revealed muscles and tendons. The mysterious being was so tall that it stood well above the clouds and blocked out the sun for millions of people in City D. Giving a quick calculation, Izuku estimated the monster to be nearly 300 meters in height. Emerald lightning enveloped Deku's form before he disappeared in a burst of speed. Standing atop the shoulder of his transformed brother, Fukeo laughed as he watched Marigori stomp on hundreds of people who were unlucky enough to be in the giant's path. "Yes, this is incredible, little brother. I never thought it would work so well," laughed the mad scientist. After years of working on his biceps brachii king steroid, he had given the drug to his little brother, Marigori, who craved power so he could surpass Deku as the strongest man in the world. The result was Marigori turning into a mutated giant who stood taller than any building or mountain and was stronger than any hero. "With my brains and your brawn, by combining the greatest of minds and the strongest of bodies this world has to offer, the two of us will conquer the earth and rule together as kings." "We're unstoppable," declared the scientist with a mad laugh. Maragori reeled his gigantic right arm back to blow away the nearby city, but the giant was cut off when a blur of green collided with his elbow. The resulting impact shattered the giant's elbow, causing it to bend unnaturally. Fukeo grabbed onto his screaming brother's shoulder to steady himself from all the sudden shaking. "Maragori? What happened? So are you the one who started all this?" Fukeo looked towards the source of the voice and paled at the sight of the green-haired man who was casually standing in the middle of the air as if it were normal. It didn't make logical sense, but then again, nothing about Deku made any logical sense. "Maragori, it's Deku. Kill him before he can stop us." While still in pain from having his right arm broken, Maragori complied with his older brother's order. The giant pulled back his uninjured arm and threw a punch at blinding speeds, far faster than a creature of his size should be capable of making. Still, even at such speeds, Deku's eyes easily kept track of the monster's attack. He could have dodged the attack without issue, but he didn't, for it wasn't necessary. Deku stayed hovering in the air as the massive fist flew at him. Just before the attack would connect, Deku held out his right hand and caught the punch, resulting in a powerful shockwave that could be felt for miles. Yet, Deku didn't so much as budge an inch, to the disbelief of the brothers. "How about we all go for a fly?" Deku clamped his hand on the monster's fist and suddenly bolted upwards. With his fist caught in the hero's unyielding death grip, Maragori was taken along for the ride, and with him, Fukeo. "Be brother, do something!" yelled a terrified Fukeo who was barely holding onto the shoulder of his younger brother. Despite his transformed brother weighing well over 100 tons, Deku didn't seem to have a problem lifting him into the sky. In fact, it almost seemed like they were going faster by the second. "I am trying!" yelled Maragori, who couldn't take his hand back from the hero. The hero's pull was too strong, and his other arm was dangling by his side, broken. Normally, Deku would flatten the mysterious being and be on his way. But seeing as how this mysterious being was nearly 900 feet tall, he couldn't just recklessly kill it. If he did, the monster's massive corpse would collapse onto City D, killing anyone who wasn't fast enough to evacuate. He couldn't kill it in the ocean either, since its large size would cause the water levels to rise drastically, resulting in floods. So, since he couldn't kill the mysterious being anywhere on the planet, there was only one last place he could do it. Full cowl, seismic toss. After flying nearly 50 kilometers upwards, Deku grabbed the monster's fist with both hands. Gritting his teeth, he tossed the giant over his shoulder and straight out of the stratosphere. Maragori's screams could be heard for a few seconds after he was chucked off the planet, but they faded as the giant was lost in the deep expanse of space. The same couldn't be said for the Fukeo, who had fainted from a lack of oxygen and was currently falling back down to Earth. If not for Deku flying down and catching him, he would have become a bloody splatter across the ground. With the unconscious scientist on hand, Deku looked back up at the sky to make sure that the giant wasn't going to be making a return before he flew down towards the closest Hero Association branch building. City Z, Izuku's apartment. "Phew. Another busy day," sighed Deku once he entered his apartment. As the #1 hero, Izuku's fans numbered in the billions, and while grateful for all their support, some of them could act a bit extreme at times. Many heroes have reported incidents when excited fans broke into their homes, which was why most heroes keep their home addresses a secret nowadays. For that same reason, Izuku had his apartment in City Z, which was the least populous of all the cities, due to the high percentage of monster appearances in the area, specifically in the ghost town. The apartment also happened to be on the outskirts of the ghost town, so he didn't have to go far whenever he got word of a monster sighting in the area. Midoriya's apartment was quite large for a person who lived alone, as it included a large sitting room, 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a large kitchen that also made up as a dining room. Since he lived alone, Izuku was caught off guard when he smelled something cooking in his apartment. Following the lovely scent to the kitchen, all the while keeping himself prepared for a possible fight with an intruder, Izuku slowly opened the door to the kitchen and found the culprit of the delicious smell of food. "Welcome home," Izuku greeted Fubuki, who smiled at Midoriya while a stew boiled in a pot on Izuku's stove. "I cooked us dinner." Fubuki was a young woman with a curvy figure, chin length, dark green hair styled in a bob, and her eyes were a shade of light green. Her attire consisted of a long white fur coat, a dark green form-fitting dress, thigh-high black boots, and several pearl necklaces. Izuku calmed down when he saw that it was only Fubuki. He looked around his large kitchen and rolled his eyes at the B-class rank 1 hero. "Last I checked, this is my apartment, so forgive me for wondering why people are in it. By the way, don't say you're cooking dinner when you aren't," exclaimed Deku while pointing an accusing finger at Fubuki, who was sitting at the dining table while her subordinates, Eyelashes, Lily, and Mountain Ape cooked up the stew. "I told you he'd notice," said a panicked Eyelashes to Fubuki, who ignored him. The B-class rank 2 hero was currently setting up the table for both Izuku and Fubuki. "He's going to kill us," muttered a heavily sweating Mountain Ape who was stirring the pot of stew. Mountain Ape was confident in his skills, as well as that of his fellow B-class heroes, but they just broke into the apartment of Deku himself, a man who could shatter mountains, split the seas, and clear the skies, all with a single punch. The entirety of the Blizzard group could attack Deku at the same time, while he had his hands tied behind his back, and they would still have no hope of defeating the man who stood at the pinnacle of the Hero Association. Unlike Eyelashes and Mountain Ape, Lily wasn't afraid of breaking into the home of the S-class rank 1 hero, as she quickly jumped in front of Deku with stars in her eyes and a notebook in her hands. "Mr. Deku, could I please have the honor of getting your autograph?" she asked, practically pleading. As much as he should be annoyed at Lily for breaking into his home, Izuku couldn't when the young girl looked up at him with so much hope and adoration in her eyes. Not someone to let a fan down, Izuku took the offered notebook and pinned from the young woman before signing his name on one of the pages. "Here you go," he said, offering the notebook back with a smile. A blushing Lily took her notebook back and looked down at it like as if it were a priceless artifact. Thank you so much, sir," she thanked, bowing low. Izuku couldn't help but chuckle over the girl's obvious excitement. "She reminds me of myself when I first met All Might," he thought in amusement, remembering how he had the same look on Lily's face all those years ago when All Might first signed his book. 10 years ago, he was a naive, quirkless boy who idolized heroes to an unhealthy degree. Now, he was the #1 hero who still idolized heroes to an unhealthy degree. How times change. Fubuki used her psychic power to pull back the chair across from her. "Come and have a seat. Dinner should be ready soon." Having grown used to Fubuki talking to him as if he were her underling, he turned around and made his way to his bedroom. "Let me change out of my costume at least." "Do you want any help?" asked Fubuki with a coy smile. She giggled when Izuku answered by slamming his bedroom door close. Izuku is shy. "Why do you antagonize him so?" asked Eyelashes, who was on the verge of crying. He knew that Fubuki had a crush on Deku, just like every other straight woman, but why did she always feel the need to get under his skin? Fubuki turned to her subordinate with the same coy smile plastered on her face. "I don't know what you mean." Mountain Ape placed 2 plates full of stew onto the table before he and his partners lined up beside one another to bow. "If that will be all, ma'am, we will take our leave." Fubuki nodded in agreement and waved them off. "You are dismissed for the day." That's all she had to say before the 3 subordinates ran out of Deku's apartment faster than Fubuki had ever seen them move before. The leader of the Blizzard group soon turned her attention to Izuku, who walked back into the kitchen, now wearing a sleeveless green t-shirt and black shorts. Not that Fubuki was complaining, since the shirt did nothing to hide his powerful muscles, nor did the shorts that showed off a lot of leg to the B-class rank 1 hero. She giggled when she read the word t-shirt, which was displayed in the middle of Izuku's t-shirt in bold black writing. Greatest hero in the world, but fashionable. Izuku was not. "Stew smells good," complimented Izuku, who took the seat across from Fubuki before he dug in. It was nice not having to cook for himself now and again. "I hope you enjoy it." "I made it with all my heart," stated Fubuki with a gentle smile and a bit of red coloring her cheeks. "Make sure to tell Mountain Ape that I appreciate the cooking," answered Izuku, although Fubuki either didn't hear him or simply chose to ignore his response. "So I see you broke into my apartment again." "Breaking in are such dirty words to use in front of a lady like myself," stated Fubuki, waving off his accusation. "Breaking in sounds like an accurate description of what you did," remarked Izuku, pointing his fork in an accusing manner at Hell's Blizzard. "You can't just enter someone's home without permission." Just after Izuku said that, a green glow enveloped his kitchen window before it telekinetically opened and a small, lithe figure let herself into the apartment. "Izuku, I came to see if you wanted to have S-class rank 2 hero, Tatsumaki, world's strongest woman, an older sister to Fubuki, stopped when she noticed that Deku and her sister were having dinner together in his apartment. "What is this?" she demanded, folding her arms together while glaring down at the two. Tatsumaki is a petite woman who has an adolescent face with emerald green eyes and green hair that naturally curls on the ends. She is adorned in a form-fitting black dress with long sleeves and 4 high-cut leg slits that show off her shapely long legs and low-heeled black shoes. Izuku saw how a few objects in his kitchen began to levitate, all due to Tatsumaki's rising telekinetic power, which was fluctuating in response to her rising anger. "Tatsu, calm down. We're just having dinner. And if dinner is as good as this, I can't wait for dessert," teased Fubuki, uncaring of the rising pressure of her older sister's power. She knew that Tatsumaki wouldn't hurt her, so she was in no real danger of suffering Tatsumaki's rage. The same couldn't be said for the apartment complex, which was starting to shake from Tatsumaki's power. Not wanting to have his apartment collapse on top of him, Izuku slammed his fist down on his dining table, not hard enough to break it but enough so it would produce a loud bang. Enough! Izuku's authoritative shout snapped Tatsumaki out of her state of anger, and she then looked down at the floor in embarrassment, looking more like a child who had been scolded. Tatsu, I've told you this before 1,000 times. You can't let yourself lose control over your powers when you get angry. The last thing we want is for a whole city to collapse, just because you got emotional, said Izuku, hating how he had to scold Tatsumaki. But if he didn't, then nobody else would. The only person in the world that Tatsumaki allowed to talk back to her was himself. Anyone else would usually find themselves 100 feet underground, or tossed into orbit, and that was if she was feeling merciful. I'm sorry, muttered Tatsumaki, refusing to look at Izuku's disappointed eyes. Apology accepted. Now come down and take a seat while I prepare you some stew, smiled Izuku, standing up to get a plate of stew for his fellow Class S hero. I made it myself, stated Fubuki with a smug grin, while a glaring Tatsumaki lowered herself down to the chair beside Izuku's. At least that was one little victory she could rejoice in. She had her subordinates make it, revealed Izuku without mercy, causing Fubuki to lose her smug grin and Tatsumaki to smirk in return. And please stop teasing your sister, Fubuki. Izuku placed the stew in front of Tatsumaki, either not noticing or ignoring the electricity that seemed to spark between the two glaring sisters. Sitting back down to continue his meal, Izuku recalled how he was introduced to the Psychic Sisters. 10 years ago, a few weeks after he was transported to this world, Izuku had saved Tatsumaki's life. She was kept captive and experimented on by a group of scientists, having been sold to them by her parents when she was just a child. For years, the scientists had conducted countless experiments on Tatsumaki, many of which were agonizingly painful. Also, they could study her powerful Esper abilities. At some point, a mysterious being that the scientist had been keeping locked up escaped, killing every scientist in the facility. Once the monster finished with the scientists, it came for her. At the time, Tatsumaki was too afraid to use her powers and would have died, if not for Izuku arriving in time to kill the monster. That was how Izuku and Tatsumaki met, and they've been close ever since. A few years later, Izuku was introduced to Tatsumaki's younger sister, Fubuki, who was also an Esper, but not as powerful as her older sister. The two were quick to become friends, but Izuku quickly became aware of an underlying tension between the sisters. The source of said tension was Tatsumaki's overprotectiveness over her younger sibling, which made Fubuki feel weak and restrained. Izuku managed to convince Tatsumaki to give Fubuki some space to let her grow as her own person. Thankfully, the decision helped to improve the sisters' relationship with one another, although they still bickered like siblings often did. They often fought over their views on strength. Tatsumaki believed that true strength came from oneself, whilst Fubuki believed strength came from working together to defeat one's opponent. Izuku believed they were both right in a sense, not that he could tell them that. Say what you will about the Psychic Sisters, but if there was one thing they shared, it was their stubbornness. They were talking about you on the news again. They mentioned how you defeated a dragon-class mysterious being in City A after it defeated 31 other heroes who couldn't so much as scratch it. Then you dealt with that giant in City D soon after. Most impressive, said Fubuki, wanting to start a conversation. There was no officially given class for the giant mysterious being, but you would have to be blind to not classify it as a dragon-level threat. Tatsumaki scoffed. Of course, Izuku could do what those 31 weaklings couldn't. Beating dragon-level monsters is nothing for someone like him. I bet Izuku didn't even break a sweat. Izuku smiled, grateful for Tatsumaki's confidence in him. It's our job to protect humanity from the threat of those monsters. Any worthwhile hero wouldn't just stand by and watch as those monsters caused havoc and destruction. I was just doing what was expected of me. Simple as that. Simple my ass, thought Fubuki, brow twitching in slight annoyance. She loved Izuku's humbleness and down-to-earth attitude, but there were times that he unknowingly bragged without realizing it. Defeating two powerful dragon-class monsters in one day might be nothing to the S-class rank 1 hero, but for most other heroes, it was an impossibility. She could have her entire Blizzard group face off against one of those dragon-class mysterious beings and get wiped out, even with her help. The same couldn't be said for her sister, who could have wiped out those two monsters just as easily as Izuku did. We should go out on a mission together someday. Why, you know, if you wanted to. Not like I care or anything, said Tatsumaki, slowly reverting to her Tsundere mode, much to Fubuki's ire. Of all the people her sister had to like, why did it have to be the same man with whom she was hoping to confess her own feelings? She didn't want to compete against her sister for Izuku, but she would if she must, and she would win, whenever she gathers up the courage to confess her feelings to him anyway. For now, she'll bide her time and wait for the right moment to strike. Within the confines of City I, there stood an institute that was renowned for being the only place in the world where young men and women could go to train and study to be the next generation of heroes for the world. Every year, hundreds to thousands of young teens apply to the academy in the hopes that they could spend the next 3 years of their lives learning to become the best heroes they can be. Since the academy was only constructed 3 years ago, the current third-year students will be the very first class to graduate from the academy. The academy is famously known as Hero Academy. Built and funded by the Hero Association, Hero Academy's main purpose is to train and guide students into becoming the next generation of heroes to defend humanity from both villains and mysterious beings. While anyone could still become a hero by passing the Hero Certification exam, Hero Academy offered its students the chance to study and train before they entered the dangerous world of heroes. Another upside to joining Hero Academy was that once the students graduated after 3 years of training and studying, they automatically earn a C-class hero ranking, so they don't need to apply to pass the Hero Certification exam. Therefore, it only made sense that every teacher in Hero Academy was an official hero, even for non-heroic subjects like math and geography. Even the principal of Hero Academy was an official hero, although he wasn't just any hero. The principal of Hero Academy so happened to be the current S-class rank 1 hero, Izuku Midoriya, or Deku as he was more widely known. Right now, Izuku Midoriya could be found sitting in his office, which was both large and simple in taste. Sitting on a comfy office chair from behind his desk, Izuku documents that helped keep the school running one way or another. On the opposite side of his desk, there were 2 comfy green chairs for anyone to sit on who so happened to visit his office, either they be professors or students. To the left of Izuku's desk was a bookshelf filled with books that ranged in everything from science textbooks to hero biographies. To his right were 3 chairs surrounding a coffee table, and overhead them was a flat-screen television which he had on, but with the volume low to not distract him from signing his paperwork. Izuku nearly groaned in frustration as he signed another document. For the last 10 years, he has defeated various criminal organizations and mysterious beings that could destroy whole cities, and yet for some reason, signing forms was enough to tire out even his near-infinite stamina and patience. Whose stupid idea was it to make a hero school anyway? Grumbled Izuku, ignoring the multiple voices in his head who reminded him it was his idea. The idea had come to him just a few months after the Hero Association was formed. While the world was lucky to get men and women of various strengths and skills to join up with the Hero Association when it first formed, there were only so many of them to patrol every city. Even then, most of the heroes weren't capable of dealing with dragon-level threats, like Vaccine Man or Elder Centipede. At the moment, only the S-class heroes could handle the dragon-level threats, and even then, most had to work together to do so. That's why Izuku proposed the Hero Academy plan to the Hero Association. Just like with UA, Hero Academy was to train their students to be the best future heroes they could be. While the training is grueling and not everyone can keep up, those who do have shown great potential to be heroes, and they'll only improve once they graduate and gain experience on the field. From what Izuku could tell, the current third years have grown to the point where they could defeat most C-class heroes, particularly the lower-ranking ones. Since he was the one who requested it, the Hero Association nominated Deku to run the school. He accepted, but with the exception that he could run Hero Academy the way he wanted it. The last thing he wanted was for political groups to poke their noses into his school and possibly jeopardize the education of his students. Admittedly, Izuku did use some of his knowledge and experience from attending UA when he built the academy from the ground up, but he also implemented his own important features that UA was missing. One such feature was that Hero Academy would accept 200 students every year for its hero course. Unlike UA, which only accepted 40 students a year and split them into 2 classes, Hero Academy would split its 200 students into nearly 10 classes. While Izuku has no regrets about making the Hero Academy, the stack of paperwork that he needed to finish by the end of each day was starting to make Izuku regret accepting the position as principal. Why couldn't one of his quirks be a duplication quirk? So much time could be saved if he could split himself into multiple copies of himself. "I see there's no time to rest when you're the #1 hero," said a kindly voice from the doorway. Izuku looked up from his desk and smiled once he saw who was standing by the door. "Silver Fong, it's good to see you. How are your classes going?" he asked, waving a hand towards a seat in front of his desk. Accepting the offer, the S-class rank 3 hero took a seat across from Izuku. "Those youngsters have too much energy for an old man like me. They're not perfect, but they're getting there. I'd say any of them could beat Sharenko at this point," chuckled Silver Fong. The martial arts master happened to be a teacher for Hero Academy, teaching martial arts to the first, second, and third years. Accepting the teaching role also helped Bang find students other than Sharenko to join his dojo, since several students had looked for further training after classes. It was nice to have the dojo filled again, especially after how his previous students left after the incident. Silver Fong wasn't the only S-class hero who worked at Hero Academy. S-class rank 11 hero, Super Alloy Darkshine taught physical education to the students during his free time. That's good to hear. Hopefully, the next generation will be better prepared for when we leave the world to them, sighed Izuku, feeling far too old for someone who was only 25. Bang smiled, encouragingly. They'll be ready. The third years, I believe, are more than ready to join C class and even B class once they earn some experience. Izuku smiled at the thought, but stopped when he saw the news channel on his television suddenly turn on. Turning up the volume with the remote, Izuku listened to the newscaster as they spoke. We interrupt this program with a breaking news bulletin. A large swarm of mosquitoes has been sighted in City Z. Mummified remains of attacked farm animals have also been found. If you encounter a large swarm of mosquitoes, it is strongly suggested that you flee immediately. City Z again? That city can't seem to take a break, said Silverfong, who turned away from the television to see Deku getting up from his desk. You're going to check it out? It's the work of either a villain or a mysterious being. You think a regular swarm of mosquitoes could do that? Asked Izuku while pointing to his television, which showed an image of dead cows that were attacked by the swarm of mosquitoes. The mosquitoes sucked out every last drop of blood from the farm animals, leaving them as dried-up husks made up of only skin and bone. Deku turned and opened the window behind his desk before stepping out, standing in midair thanks to float. I need to handle this before it can do any more damage. Don't want to think about what would happen if civilians were to get attacked by that swarm. And it's a good enough excuse for you to ignore your paperwork, deadpanned Silverfong, who glanced at the stack of paperwork that was left on Deku's desk. Sorry, can't hear you. I'm off to save the day, shouted Deku, who immediately took flight up into the air so to avoid Silverfong's accusing glare. City Z. With a swarm of mosquitoes attacking anyone and anything alive, a warning had been sent out by the Hero Association, requesting all the residents of City Z to evacuate the city at once. By now, most residents have already fled to safety, although some have decided to use the crisis for their benefit by looting the now empty city. Ha ha ha, thanks to that warning, they're all empty, laughed a thief who walked out of a house he just robbed. Like someone's going to die from a mosquito bite, he smirked to himself before turning to his large bag of loot. What's losing a little blood if I can walk away with all of this? A sudden gust of wind surprised the thief as his hat was blown right off his head. Was that the wind? Wondered the confused thief while looking back to see his hat being blown high into the air. With his back turned, the thief didn't see the swarm of mosquitoes flying toward him until it was too late. What the? Cried the thief as thousands of mosquitoes swarmed him. The thief panicked and tried to bat away the mosquitoes with his crowbar, but it did nothing to the mosquitoes that started to suck the blood out of him. The thief could only cry out in the middle of the deserted city while tens of thousands of mosquitoes sucked up his precious blood. A few seconds later, the blood-filled mosquitoes flew off, leaving the now-dead thief as a dried-up corpse in the middle of the road. The swarm of mosquitoes returned to their queen to transfer the gathered blood to her. The queen of the mosquitoes, Mosquito Girl, sighed in disappointment. Come on, that wasn't enough blood to satisfy my needs, she moaned almost before addressing her mosquito servants. Now, go get some more for me. Target has been acquired. Without warning, a stream of flames was launched up at the flying Mosquito Girl, who batted it aside before she studied the one responsible for the attack. The one responsible was the cyborg, Genos, who was a handsome young man with spiky blonde hair and pierced ears. The cyborg's most noticeable features were his eyes, which have black sclera and yellow irises. I see. You make the mosquitoes suck the blood, and then take it all for yourself. You must be controlling each one by using some sort of signal. That would explain the mysterious behavior. So if I were to get rid of you, their leader, would the swarm disperse as well? Wondered Genos while glancing at the billions of mosquitoes who were all swarming behind the mysterious being, ready to move at her command. Mosquito Girl smirked down at Genos. Our next meal is here. Go drain that fool dry, she ordered. Millions of mosquitoes quickly converged on the cyborg, who remained steadfast and calm, despite the disastrous circumstance. Buried beneath all the mosquitoes, one would think that Genos was done for. Incinerate. To Mosquito Girl's surprise, the millions of mosquitoes surrounding the cyborg suddenly combusted into flames, courtesy of Genos, who now had his right arm raised, showing that he used the incineration cannon in his palm to kill the swarm of mosquitoes with overwhelming heat. I will eliminate you. Stay right where you are. While surprised by the fact her mosquitoes didn't kill the man, Mosquito Girl's arrogance quickly resurfaced. You believe you can eliminate me? Giggled the monster before her expression became manic. Then go on and try. Genos accepted the challenge and ran up the wall of a nearby building to jump at Mosquito Girl, who dodged the cyborg's thrown punch and smacked him with her claw, failing to do any vital damage to his durable metal body. The mysterious being swung her other claw, but Genos blocked it with his right arm. The cyborg and monster pushed to overpower the other, but they remain at a stalemate. Seeing as he wasn't making any progress, Genos detonated an explosion of heat from a port on his arm, which propelled him away from the mysterious being. The cyborg backflipped in midair, and when he landed on the side of a building, he jumped off toward Mosquito Girl and threw a punch. Instead of dodging like last time, Mosquito Girl threw her own punch, which nullified Genos' attack. The mysterious being then used her free arm to smack the cyborg down to the ground, but Genos used his thrusters to slow his descent and landed safely on the floor. Once he safely landed, he aimed his right incineration cannon at Mosquito Girl. Incinerate! The powerful burst of flames looked like it was gonna hit the monster, but Mosquito Girl dodged it in a sudden burst of speed. While surprised, Genos continued to fire blast after blast of flames at the monster, who kept dodging while getting ever so closer to the cyborg. Like a blur, Mosquito Girl flew past the cyborg and ripped off Genos' right arm by piercing it with her enlarged horn. The monster looked back at the cyborg with a smug expression on her face. "Maybe a leg next time," giggled Mosquito Girl, who only then realized that something felt off about herself. What happened to my legs?" wondered the mysterious being, who saw that she was now missing both of her legs. Genos tossed away Mosquito Girl's legs. Having ripped them off the monster at the same time, she took his arm. Realizing that the cyborg was tougher than she expected, Mosquito Girl attempted to flee. Not willing to allow the monster to escape, Genos aimed his remaining incineration cannon at the fleeing monster and launched an explosive ball of concentrated flames, only for a wall of mosquitoes to form up around their queen and block the attack at the cost of their own lives. "You won't escape," declared Genos, who gave chase. "What the hell is that guy? He'll get me if I don't come up with something," muttered Mosquito Girl in slight distress. She licked her lips. "The townspeople may be hiding, but there are plenty of animals around to feed on," said the mysterious being, having sent out more of her mosquitoes to feed on the animals in the surrounding forests. The monster flew high into the air while ordering her blood-filled mosquitoes to return to her. "That's it. Come here, little ones. Empty all of the delicious juices you carry into me," exclaimed Mosquito Girl before being surrounded by a massive dome made up of trillions of her mosquitoes that all transferred the blood they gathered into her. So many. If she has been collecting blood from the whole town, as well as the surrounding area, then it may be more than a simple food source for her, analyzed Genos as he powered up his incinerator cannon. "I shall put an end to this as soon as I can." Putting all the power he could muster into his incinerator cannon, the cyborg aimed and fired a powerful concentrated beam of fire at the massive swarm of mosquitoes. The beam impacted with the dome of mosquitoes, resulting in a mass explosion that brightened the sky for miles around. When the explosion died down, there wasn't a single mosquito left alive, nor was there any sign of their queen. Genos used his scanners to search for the monster, in case it somehow managed to survive, as doubtful as that was. "Looking for me?" Surprised that the monster was alive and that she somehow managed to get behind him without his sensors picking her up, Genos quickly jumped away to make space between himself and the monster. Genos then eyed the mysterious being, noting the changes in her appearance. Where her skin was once a mix of white and black, it was now a mix of pink and dark red, likely a result of all the blood she absorbed from her mosquitoes. Mosquito Girl's short white hair had grown longer and was now pinkish red in color, flowing lazily against the wind. She even had a new pair of legs, having regenerated them to replace the ones that Genos ripped off. "You idiot, I no longer need my tiny little helpers. I mean," stated the transformed Mosquito Girl, dismissing the loss of her mosquitoes. The monster turned to the building on her right and swung a single claw at it. The power in the swing was so great that it completely destroyed the tall building, as well as the buildings behind it. "Just look at how strong I've become," she laughed before focusing her attention back on the shell-shocked cyborg. Faster than Genos could react, Mosquito Girl appeared behind him and cleaved through the left side of his body with a casual swing of her claw. Before, it required Mosquito Girl's full strength to damage Genos' mechanical body, but now, she could tear through him almost lazily. Despite his left side being shredded, Genos gritted his teeth and spun around to throw a punch at the monster, but he never got to throw the punch once Mosquito Girl batted him into the air with no effort at all. Laughing manically, Mosquito Girl flew after the airborne cyborg. Just as gravity was about to take effect on Genos' body, the monster blurred across the sky, delivering blows on the cyborg every time she passed by, whilst also keeping him stuck in the air. "Can't your macho punches kill a little mosquito?" mocked Mosquito Girl, who laughed while cutting up the cyborg's body even more. "What a weakling," she scoffed, stopping her attacks to lazily hover in the air. With Mosquito Girl no longer hitting him about in the air, gravity regained control, and Genos' body started to fall. "I get it now. The more blood she is able to consume, the more powerful she becomes," thought Genos in realization. Not that it mattered now. His mechanical body is too severely damaged, and even if he was in pristine condition, he knew he would still lose to the monster. After transforming, she became far too fast and powerful for him to beat. Lazily hovering over Genos, Mosquito Girl hummed to herself before she suddenly charged at his falling body. "I think I'll have your head next," shouted the mysterious being in sadistic glee as she reared her right arm back to cleave off Genos's head. "I let my guard down. I have no chance at winning," thought Genos as he initiated his self-destruct sequence, so he could at least take the monster out with him. "All I can do is self-destruct. Forgive me, Doctor." Just as Mosquito Girl was within range to kill Genos, a blow to her side had the monster shriek in agony whilst being launched into a nearby building that collapsed down on top of her, burying the monster in a pile of rubble. Stopping his self-destruct sequence, Genos gasped at seeing the powerful monster be knocked aside so easily. "Are you all right?" The injured, but still alive cyborg turned to look up at his savior with his one good remaining eye. The man who saved him must be a hero, as he adorned a mostly green costume that was tight on his body, showcasing the raw power that was hidden in those muscles. Genos then saw that it wasn't just the costume that was green, but the hero's eyes and hair as well, practically emerald. And yet, for some reason, the man's most striking feature was his kind smile. "Who are you?" Deku blinked, doing a good job of hiding his surprise over the cyborg's question. Izuku wasn't egotistical. He became a hero to save lives, not to become popular, but being the S-class rank 1 hero brought along worldwide fame and acclaim whether he wanted it or not. Having someone not know who he was felt both odd, but also kind of refreshing. Before Izuku could open his mouth to respond, the pile of rubble exploded outwards as a pink figure flew out of it ferociously, revealing it to be none other than Mosquito Girl. From high in the air, the mysterious being glared down at Deku, seemingly not noticing the blood dripping from her mouth. "Be bastard. Just for that, I'll gut you slowly so I can feed you your own entrails," she threatened, pointing a shaky claw at Deku. Lost in pain and rage, Mosquito Girl didn't realize how much damage she had taken from Deku's punch, nor did she take note of the fist-shaped indentation on the left side of her abdomen, although she most definitely felt it. "Still alive? Not bad," remarked Izuku, somewhat surprised by the monster's durability. He barely used one for all when he struck her, having thought that her fragile-looking body wouldn't be able to take too much damage. The mysterious being was tougher than her body made her out to be, although it didn't take a doctor to know that the mysterious being was seriously injured. Angry over both the throbbing pain in her side and the annoying hero who didn't appear to see her as a threat, Mosquito Girl scoffed. Disappearing in a blur, she launched herself straight at the hero and aimed her claw at his neck. "Die!" Full cowl, spark punch. Mosquito Girl may be fast, especially after undergoing her transformation, but even she couldn't comprehend the speed of Deku's straight punch. One moment, she was about to slice off the human's head, and the next, she became a bloody smear along the wall of a building. Genos's mangled body was tossed back several feet as a result of the shockwave the hero's punch made. Not that he cared, he was too busy processing what he just witnessed, having been literally and fugitively blown away by the green-haired man's awe-inspiring power. Before the hero intervened, the mysterious being had been toying with him during their bout and would have killed him if she first tried. The monster must have been a dragon-level threat, if not at least demon, and the hero defeated her as easily as swatting a mosquito out of the sky. Now that the mysterious being had been dealt with, Deku turned his full attention onto the injured cyborg. "Hey, you need any help? You're kind of all broken up," Deku said, somewhat awkwardly. The number 1 hero was afraid to pick up the injured cyborg, for fear that he might just cause even more damage. "Please, tell me your name," pleaded the injured cyborg, ignoring Izuku's worry over his condition. Deku stared at the cyborg, wondering if his injuries affected his mind as well. "I'm Deku. Please, take me as your disciple." "What?" City Z, Deku's apartment. After waiting for Genos to be taken away by the collector drones, Izuku didn't expect to see the cyborg ever again. After all, it is a big world out there. So what were the odds that they'd see each other again? So imagine his surprise when the next morning, Genos stood by his front doorstep, completely repaired and ready to learn. Instead, Izuku offered the cyborg a cup of tea. "So you want to be my disciple?" he asked for confirmation while he took a seat on his couch. Instead of taking a seat on one of Izuku's couch chairs, Genos sat on the floor on his knees. "Yes, sir. And why is it that you want to be my disciple?" "Not to be rude, but there's not much I can teach you, physically anyway, seeing as most of your body seems to be mechanical in nature." Genos stared at Izuku, managing to look confused while still keeping a serious expression on his face. "I don't understand. Do you not have parts installed in your body, sensei?" "He already sees me as his sensei," thought Izuku in a mix of bewilderment and amusement. No, I don't use any. You defeated that monster yesterday. With pure physical power? The cyborg's tone didn't change, but the way his eyes widened an extra half-inch was all that was needed to show his surprise. Izuku wasn't going to explain One for All to someone he only met. Not even Tatsumaki or Fubuki knew about the truth of One for All, although they knew his strength wasn't normal by any means. I guess you could say that. Incredible. To be as strong as you, that is my dream, said Genos, who started to explain his life story to the #1 hero. Usually, Izuku was a patient man. One must be patient when dealing with one of Tatsumaki's and Fubuki's shouting matches that occur once a week, but Genos' long and detailed life story strained his patience to its limit. Altogether, it took the cyborg 20 minutes to explain, but it felt like an hour with how detailed it was. When Genos finally finished explaining his life story, it took all of Izuku's willpower to not sigh in relief. In the end, Izuku sympathized with Genos. The cyborg was looking to avenge his family by destroying the crazed cyborg that killed them. Throughout his search, Genos fought criminals and monsters that he came across in his travels, automatically putting him in Izuku's good books. Having taken the time to look over the footage from the many security cameras in City Z, he had gotten to see how the cyborg fared against Mosquito Girl before he arrived. From the footage of the fight, Izuku was impressed by the cyborg's skill. Genos had gone toe-to-toe with the demon-level monster and even forced it to retreat. If not for the mysterious being transforming into a dragon-level state, the cyborg would have likely won. Still, Izuku had never taken an actual student before. Sometimes he filled in for teachers at the Hero Academy when they turned up sick or injured from fighting monsters, but taking someone as an official student was different from teaching young teens in a classroom. He wasn't even sure what he could teach the cyborg, since he didn't need any muscle training. That's when an idea came to mind. Tell me, Genos, have you applied to the Hero Registry? Genos shook his head. Not yet, but I have been planning to do so for when the next time the exam opens. Good. I have heard that the next exam will be taking place in 2 weeks from now, so I will give you a challenge. If you pass the Hero Certification exam with flying colors, only then will I agree to take you on as my student, stated Izuku, much to Genos' pleasure. I won't let you down, sir, exclaimed Genos, causing Izuku to smile as he found the cyborg's determination to be inspiring. Suddenly, both Hero and cyborg turned towards the far wall of Izuku's living room. Sensei, I sense targets approaching fast, stated Genos, who crouched down so he could spring into action at a moment's notice. I sense them too, remarked Izuku, who pushed himself off his couch, just as the far wall was smashed open. From the wreckage stood a mysterious being that looked like a mutated praying mantis, although the top of the monster's head was transparent, revealing its brain. Greetings, I am Kamakiri from the House of Evolution, greeted the monster before he focused his attention on Deku. I kindly ask that you come with me, Deku. If you refuse, I'll have no choice but to cut off your legs and carry you back to our headquarters. The monster rubbed his scythe-like forelegs together while licking his lips, seemingly wishing for Deku to refuse so he had an excuse to get violent. Normally, Izuku would just pulverize the mysterious being who just smashed into his apartment, but hearing that the monster was from the House of Evolution made him curious. House of Evolution? As in the same House of Evolution that Zombie Man is from? He wondered, knowing of the S-Class Rank 8 hero's home origin, after looking into his profile that the association gathered on him, just as he did with every other hero and association executive after the purge. Zombieman's profile didn't only mention how he came from the House of Evolution, but also how he didn't have the greatest of relationships with it. Not surprising, since they had used him as an experiment. By the look of the monster in front of him, this must be another one of their experiments. Izuku wasn't ignorant of his surroundings, as he could sense other monsters nearby, 5 more when not including Kamakiri. An idea suddenly springs to mind. Genos, you said that you wanted to be my student? Well, I see an opportunity for you to show me what you can do. I want to see what makes you worthy to become my student. Kamakiri began to sweat heavily when Genos raised his right arm, which was now glowing with power. Exterminate. Outside the apartment on the street, Frogman and Sludgerus jump in fright when a beam of fire erupts from the hole that their advanced agent, Kamakiri, made in the apartment. It seems that Kamakiri has been defeated. I can no longer sense him with my telepathy, stated Sludgerus, who lost contact with his comrade when the beam of flames was shot out of the apartment. Frogman looked at Sludgerus in disbelief. What? Wasn't he one of our stronger guys? The two monsters were interrupted when 2 figures jumped out of the hole in the apartment. One they recognize as their target, Deku, but they don't recognize the cyborg who was glaring daggers at them. Don't worry, Sensei. I will deal with them, stated Genos, who charged at the 2 sweating monsters. But he only managed to take 2 steps before Deku suddenly picked him up by his shoulder with one hand. Sensei? You should study your surroundings before you rush in like that, Genos, told Izuku, sagely, before Genos could ask what he meant by that. A pair of small claws poked out of the ground where Genos was just standing. After they grasped nothing but air for a moment, they retreat underground. You had one job to do, Ground Dragon, and you couldn't even do that, right? Stated another monster who walked around the corner of the street while Deku placed Genos back down. The monster was a large humanoid lion with a full mane and tail. He adorned a black shirt, animal furs on his shoulders, and a leopard skin cloth around his waist, secured by heavy chains and a belt with a lion head buckle. He also wore bracelets on both wrists and ankles and bracers on both of his muscular biceps. Another monster that resembled a brown mole dug out of the ground nearby, looking ashamed. Apologies. I didn't expect our target to pick him up like that. Useless, the lot of you, scoffed the large monster who stepped past a scared Sludgerus and Frogman to smirk at Deku. So you're the so-called strongest hero, huh? You don't look like much to me, said the humanoid lion before bellowing out a laugh. But all you ants look weak when compared to the Beast King. Why you dash, growled Genos, who stepped forward to defend his hopeful sensei, but Izuku blocked him with an arm. No need for you to dirty your hands with him, Genos, stated Izuku, who stepped forward to challenge the Beast King. Besides, you should be focusing on the enemy behind you. Behind me? Thought Genos, having not sensed anyone behind him until another monster smashed through a nearby house. Genos was quick to turn around and saw a gorilla-like creature that was adorned in a metallic suit of armor. A cyborg? The real reason Izuku didn't let Genos fight the Beast King was that he could tell the monster was far too strong for the cyborg to handle. Genos may have done well against Mosquito Girl before she transformed, but the Beast King is obviously on a completely different level than her. The armored monster that Genos was fighting now is at a much more realistic power level for Genos to fight, so he'll leave the cyborg be for now. If he can't defeat that monster, then he won't make Farid as my student, thought Izuku while squaring off against Beast King. Beast King stared down at the supposed #1 hero with a large cocky smirk on his face. So you want to fight? All right then, let's see how you face off against the likes of me, roared Beast King, who lunged at Izuku with his very sharp claws poised to rip him apart. Just as the Beast King's attack was about to connect, Deku threw a single punch which hit the Beast King straight in his stomach. Immediately, the monster was thrown backwards by the force of the punch, knocking aside Sludgerus and Frogman, who were unfortunate enough to be standing behind him. Beast King was thrown back down the street before he managed to stab his large claws down into the pavement to slow down his momentum. Once he came to a complete stop, Beast King vomited out enough blood to fill a bathtub, showcasing how much damage Deku's lone punch did to him. He managed to push back Beast King and make him cough up blood with one punch, thought Ground Dragon in complete and utter shock. The fact that the hero did so in an almost leisurely manner made Ground Dragon discern that they might be fighting someone a bit above their league. Even though he was in immense pain, now had a large purple-colored bruise that covered most of his muscular torso, and was coughing up an unhealthy amount of blood, Beast King chuckled before pushing himself up to stand at his full height. What the doctor said was true. You are the strongest hero, praised the monster before he underwent his transformation. But there can only be one king of the jungle, and that will be me, roared Beast King, whose muscles bulged in size while his claws sharpened even more than they already were. Lion Slash, Meteor Power Shower. Having sensed the monster's power increase, Izuku reacted accordingly and activated Full Cowl to enhance his speed and reflexes. Green bolts of lightning spread out across Izuku's large body with the occasional flicker of green flames. Beast King unleashed a flurry of slashes so fast and strong that the shockwaves alone managed to cut apart nearby buildings with ease. However, they failed to cut Izuku, who was moving so fast that he was able to dodge each one of Beast King's slashes, although Sludgerus and Frogman weren't so lucky, for they were too slow to avoid the shockwaves and ended up sliced to pieces. Not that Beast King cared about killing his comrades. Having enough of the destruction released by the monster, Izuku dived forward and got into Beast King's personal space. Beast King smirked down at Izuku as he only saw an easier target, now that the hero was so close. Die! Roared Beast King, while thrusting his large claws down on Deku. The sound of ripping flesh and breaking bones echoes across the city street. No longer smiling, Izuku closed his eyes and ignored the splatter of blood on his cheek. If it's any consolation, you were pretty strong, said the #1 hero, whose left arm was currently embedded into Beast King's chest. Izuku's hand protruded out of Beast King's back, and in his bloodied hand was the monster's still beating heart. Even now, the killing didn't feel very heroic to Izuku, but he had learned a long time ago that it was necessary. Beast King grunted in pain as blood spilt out of his mouth and from the hole in his chest. When he tried to speak, all he could let out were a few gurgles before he lost all his remaining strength and collapsed on Deku's shoulder, dead. Ground Dragon shook in absolute terror after watching Izuku kill the House of Evolution's second strongest fighter. One moment, Beast King was pressing the attack, using his strongest move to do so, and the next, the hero stabbed his entire arm into Beast King's chest, killing him. To this I is who we were supposed to see capture? This is the S strength of the S strongest H hero? Thought the shaking Ground Dragon. Dr. Genus sent us to our deaths. Ground Dragon's fear only escalated once Deku turned his sights on himself. With a shriek of terror, Ground Dragon dived into the floor and began digging to escape the wrath of the strongest hero. Unfortunately, Ground Dragon didn't get far because a whip made out of black energy dived in after the monster and coiled around his body before pulling him back to the surface. After being forcefully ripped out of the underground, Ground Dragon was left suspended in front of Deku by the black whip of energy that was protruding out of the hero's open right palm. Impossible. You're going to tell me everything I need to know about the House of Evolution? Ordered Deku, whose smile was no longer plastered on his face. All that was left was the strongest hero who wanted to deal with the threat that was the House of Evolution. While monsters like Kamikuri and Ground Dragon could be dealt with by nearly any C-class or B-class hero, the same couldn't be said about Beast King. If the House of Evolution could make monsters as strong as him, then they needed to be dealt with as soon as possible. Who knows, they might have even created another zombie man, and that alone would be extremely problematic. Sadly, Deku wasn't getting many answers from Ground Dragon, who was so terrified over his predicament that he had lost all cognitive function. All the monster could do was sweat heavily and shake in fear. Now that Izuku thought about it, the petrified monster somewhat reminded him of his old classmate, Mineta, at least when it came to the sweating and shaking in fear part. With a sigh, Izuku went ahead to give the monster a quick death and so tightened the black whip around Ground Dragon's throat, which ended up beheading the monster in an instant. Dropping the two pieces of Ground Dragon's body, Izuku turned to see how Genos was doing and was impressed to see that he had already dealt with the cyborg gorilla and did so without getting so much as a scratch on himself. The same couldn't be said for the cyborg gorilla, who had lost his helmet, as well as both of his arms and legs. Answer the question, or you're going to be eliminated. Your choice, said Genos, aiming an incinerator cannon at the crippled monster, threateningly. It is you who will be eliminated, you fool. I am the third most powerful fighter in the House of Evolution. At your power level, you will never beat the Beast King, the second most powerful fighter. You will be destroyed, told Armored Gorilla, his voice sounding much like an emotionless robot. Izuku walked up from behind Genos and threw an object on the floor. Armored Gorilla looked down at the object and recognized it as Beast King's belt, although the blood on the belt buckle was new. Beast King is dead, and if you don't want to join him, then you're going to tell us everything. For a moment, it seemed like Armored Gorilla was going to take his secrets to the grave with him. At least, until he started sweating and shaking his head in fear, comically. Oh look, I'm sorry. I'll tell you everything, just don't kill me, pleaded the monster, losing his robotic voice. Izuku blinked in surprise. Wait, what happened to your robot voice? Sorry about that, I was just trying to sound cool, admitted Armored Gorilla. Afterwards, Armored Gorilla explained the origins of the House of Evolution, as well as the man who created it, Dr. Genus. Dr. Genus's goal in life was the artificial evolution of humanity as a species, but since no one in the science community would help him, Dr. Genus continued his work by himself. It was only when the scientist was in his 70s did he manage to get the results he was looking for. With said results, he had managed to regain his youth, create an army of clones based on himself, and have conducted many experiments on both animals and humans, creating mutant monsters like Armored Gorilla and Beast King. Izuku also discovered that Mosquito Girl was one of Dr. Genus's creations. Is the reason he sent you after me because of revenge? Because I killed Mosquito Girl? Asked Izuku, arms folded across his chest whilst his head tilted to the side, curiously. Armored Gorilla shook his head. No. The boss man saw how easily you defeated Mosquito Girl after she gained her complete transformation, and so he ordered us to capture you and bring you back to our headquarters so he can study your body. I can see why he would want to study Sensei's body to further his research in evolution. Sensei's body surpasses that of other humans, said Genos, having spent much of last night studying the many videos online that showed Deku performing feats of superhuman ability. Throughout the internet, Genos had witnessed Deku destroy monsters the size of skyscrapers, clear the clouds in the sky, and even conjure twisters, all with the power of his fist. Izuku frowned for many reasons. One was that if what Armored Gorilla said was true, then this Dr. Genus would likely try to capture him again. Not that he was worried that he couldn't handle whatever the scientist threw at him. It was the collateral damage that the monsters would cause that he was more concerned about. Izuku also didn't like the sound of Dr. Genus's goal to try and force humanity to go through its next stage of evolution. Humanity must evolve when it is ready, not be forced into it. However, deep down, there was a more selfish reason for why Deku didn't want humanity to enter its next stage of evolution. The next stage would likely result in humanity unlocking quirks, just as they did in his homeworld, and that was the last thing he wanted. Not just because spikes of villainy would rise once people unlocked quirks, but mostly because not everyone would get a quirk of their own and would be looked down on for it by the rest of society, just like he was when he was growing up. Izuku looked down at his open palm, remembering how his life changed so drastically when he was diagnosed as quirkless. How the adults would give him pitying stares, how the teachers would shun him away from the other students as if his quirklessness was contagious, how none of the other children would play with the quirkless loser. Even Katsuki, his childhood friend, was quick to turn his back on him and became his biggest bully. If Katsuki didn't remind him about his quirkless status at least once a day, then he would use his explosion quirk on him for target practice. To show him his place, as his former friend would say. Izuku wouldn't wish such a life on anyone. Despite how upsetting his memories were, Izuku couldn't help but chuckle. Everyone looked down on him all his life for not having a quirk. Now he had 7 of them. If that wasn't irony, he wouldn't know what was. Refocusing on what was happening right now, Izuku turned to Genos. Let's go. We've got all we need from him. It's time we visit the House of Evolution. Izuku stormed down the street as Genos nodded. After asking Armored Gorilla if the House of Evolution had any other cyborgs, to which the monster replied in the negative, he followed after his sensei. House of Evolution. Hidden within the House of Evolution was Dr. Genus, who was watching everything from a large monitor. After witnessing all but Armored Gorilla get killed off, the scientist clenched his fists in outrage. Impossible. Our elite force, formed for the extermination of these obsolete humans, wiped out. Even his second strongest fighter, Beast King, was killed. Surrounding Dr. Genus was his small army of clones who were all completely identical to him in every way, except for their plain white shirts and pants which had different numbers printed on them to identify which clone was which. Clone number 33 spoke up. According to Armored Gorilla's report, the 2 responsible for doing so are on their way here. The monitor showed an image from Armored Gorilla's point of view, showing both Deku and the unknown cyborg. Dr. Genus gritted his teeth, feeling a shiver of fear travel down his spine when he saw the image of the number 1 hero no longer smiling. The scientist didn't expect so much resistance from the hero, even if he was supposed to be the strongest hero of the Hero Association. Deku was still an obsolete human who should have fallen to his creations, but he has proven to be far stronger than he anticipated. If they manage to make it to the lab, all of our research, everything that we have been working on could be destroyed. We're in serious trouble, stated clone number 78. Realizing that he had few options left, Dr. Genus clenched his fists and looked down, as if ashamed he had to make this decision. We're forced to use our trump card, he said, making the clones gasp in realization. Begin preparations for the release of Carnage Kabuto. Dr. Genus's order was met with the disbelieving and terrified cries of all his clones. What? No, not him. That's crazy. He'll finally be released? He's right. That might be the only way. It's too dangerous. I have a bad feeling about this. Quiet down. He'll be our very last resort, told Dr. Genus, silencing his clones. Clone number 33 gulped, nervously. But sir, we'll start by activating all of our traps from the 1st floor to the 8th. If we're lucky, they will take care of the intruders. I'm aware of what would happen to us if we fail, especially to me, stated Dr. Genus, knowing that if the traps didn't work then one of 2 things would happen to him. Deku will either arrest him or Carnage Kabuto will kill them all. As it's still too early to tell what will happen, he'll just have to wait and see. Moving faster than the eye could see, Deku flew across the sky while holding Genos under his left arm. On occasion, shockwaves would occur whenever he broke the sound barrier. Incredible. I knew you could fly, but not as fast as this, sensei, praised and awed Genos as the wind brushed past him, harshly. The harsh winds might have torn the skin off a normal human, but Genos' skin was made up of a tough synthetic material. Sorry about this, but this is faster than us running, and I don't think you can keep up with my top speed, said Izuku, not out of arrogance, but simply stating a fact. Genos might be fast, but he was nowhere near fast enough to keep up with Deku. If Genos tried, he would only damage his mechanical body. After flying across the sky at blinding speeds for a solid 10 minutes, Izuku spotted the tall building that Armored Gorilla told them about. Deactivating his float quirk, Izuku allowed gravity to drop him back down to the ground in front of the building. When Izuku's body landed, the ground exploded in a shower of dirt and rock. When the dust cleared, Izuku could be seen crouched in a crater, having landed perfectly without any damage to his person, or to Genos, who was still under his arm. We're here, stated Deku while dropping Genos, who got up to look up at the tower that made up the headquarters for the House of Evolution. Taking in his surroundings, Izuku could see why Dr. Genus decided to place the headquarters here. The headquarters was located in a forest with a large cliff, close enough that it hid the tall building from one side. The building itself looked old and weathered, having moss growing along the sides of the building. But if what armored gorilla said about Dr. Genus unlocking a scientific method to keep his youth was true, then the scientist and the building could be nearly 100 years old. That did explain the weathered appearance of the building. Unless you were specifically looking for it in the middle of the forest, you likely wouldn't find it. Looks like there are 8 floors to it, so we should start from the top and make our way to dash. Boom. The old and weathered headquarters of the House of Evolution was incinerated on the spot in a powerful explosion, courtesy of Genos, who went ahead and destroyed the building with the use of both of his incinerator cannons. Genos. Yes, sensei? Why did you just blow up the building? In the interest of efficiency, I thought it would be best to destroy them all in one fell swoop, answered the cyborg, bluntly. With how mature he sounded, Izuku tended to forget that Genos was only 19 years old and had yet to learn the steps to being a good hero. True, that was efficient, but next time, don't just destroy everything. When dealing with criminals, our job as heroes is to apprehend them while also gathering evidence and saving possible hostages. We only kill humans if we have no other choice on the matter. If we are so quick to kill humans, then we become no better than the monsters we fight. Genos looked at his sensei, recognizing a lot of wisdom in his words. In the blink of an eye, Genos took out his notebook and began writing down Izuku's wise words. So inspiring. No wonder you are the #1 hero. Strong in both body and mind, complimented the cyborg while he wrote down everything. Now that he got a good look at the cyborg, Genos' straightforward and serious manner reminded Izuku a lot of his old classmate, Tenya. Shaking his head over the cyborg's antics, Deku walked over to what little remained of the House of Evolution to see if they could find anything. After looking around the rubble, Deku spotted a metal door in the floor, leading into a basement. Walking over to it, Deku grabbed one corner of the heavy-duty door and peeled it open without any hassle. Looks like there's a basement. The sound of screams and gunfire could be heard in one of the rooms of the underground facility for the House of Evolution. In the room, one of Dr. Genus's clones could be found shooting an assault rifle at a giant monster. Said monster was a massive being that towered over the shooting clone and looked humanoid in appearance, but had many characteristics that resembled a beetle, including a thick exoskeleton, a pair of wings encased by elytra, and a large horn on its head. Along its bulky arms and legs were large spikes. The monster was Carnage Kabuto, the strongest fighter in the House of Evolution. Stop it. Just stay away, yelled the clone in terror as he continued firing his automatic rifle at Carnage Kabuto. Not that it did anything to the monster. Carnage Kabuto's exoskeleton was so thick that he couldn't even feel the bullets hitting him. The clone's cries were quickly silenced when Carnage Kabuto threw a lazy punch at him, causing the clone to explode in a shower of gore from the power of the punch and become a bloody smear across the floor. Behind Carnage Kabuto, Dr. Genus entered the large room with his hands in his pockets so he could pretend that they weren't shaking in fear. Hey, Carnage Kabuto, greeted the sweating Dr. Genus, who was trying to keep himself calm while in the presence of his strongest creation. Tell me, are you feeling all right? It seems like you killed a bunch of my clones again, asked the scientist while referring to the smears of blood and remnants of white cloth, which used to be some of his clones who were given the unfortunate job of releasing Carnage Kabuto from his restraints. Are you satisfied? You fool. Why would I be satisfied, huh? Asked the monster in annoyance. I've been kept up deep under the earth. I'm the strongest warrior in the entire House of Evolution, bellowed Carnage Kabuto while ripping off the heavy metal brace around his neck, freeing him from the last of restraints that kept him locked up for so many years. You were imprisoned because you're mentally unstable. We couldn't control you. There was no choice on the matter, answered Dr. Genus, glaring at his strongest creation. You couldn't control me? Laughed Carnage Kabuto. Moron. I'm the ultimate culmination of the new human you guys have sought for so long. My intelligence and physical strength are incomparable to your own. The way I see it, you and your clones should be the ones obeying me, stated Carnage Kabuto, while getting into Dr. Genus's face. To add insult to injury, the monster stuck his tongue out, mockingly. No, you're a failure, thought Dr. Genus, believing Carnage Kabuto to be his greatest failure. It's true that you perform at unheard-of levels, but you lack humanity. Go ahead and kill me. Plenty of clones could take my place, said Dr. Genus, accepting his fate. If he wanted to, Carnage Kabuto could kill him and all his clones, and there would be nothing they could do to stop him. Even if all their other creations like Mosquito Girl and Beast King were still alive, they would just be killed by Carnage Kabuto. He was simply that strong. Oh, voiced Carnage Kabuto in curiosity. But I have a favor to ask, continued the scientist as a holographic screen appeared beside them, showing a captured image of Deku and Genos. There's a specimen I must have. He's proven to be extremely strong, said to be the strongest man on the planet. I want you to catch him for me. Carnage Kabuto looked at the screen with an excited grin on his face. Dead or alive? Ever since they found the underground hatch, Deku and Genos have been walking down a straight hallway for the past 5 minutes, failing to find any signs of anyone alive in the underground facility. Stay on your guard, Genos, told a serious Izuku, although he was smiling. I will, sensei, nodded Genos, walking alongside Deku, who suddenly stopped, making the cyborg stop as well. Something's coming. Genos turned to his sensei in confusion before he stiffened up, discovering 2 living signatures from his sensors. Sensei could sense them coming even when my own sensors couldn't pick them up, thought Genos, only being further amazed by his sensei. The more he learned about Deku, the more reasons why the man was deserving of his #1 hero title. In the distance, they could see lights being smashed, courtesy of Carnage Kabuto, who was running towards them while holding an injured Dr. Genus in his right hand. Which one is it? Asked the monster. To the one on the right, answered Dr. Genus, struggling to remain conscious due to the pain from Carnage Kabuto's rough handling of him. In that case, you don't need the one on the left, exclaimed Carnage Kabuto, who backhanded Genos into the wall, while also dropping Dr. Genus to the floor. Genos! Cried Izuku, seeing the cyborg now embedded in the wall. At the same time, Carnage Kabuto appeared behind Izuku, who turned to him. My name is Carnage Kabuto. We've got a combat experimentation room back this way, said Carnage Kabuto, while pointing a thumb behind him. Let's throw down in there. Izuku glared up at Carnage Kabuto with his eyes while keeping his smile. This monster is strong. Stronger than Beast King. A dragon-level threat, for sure, he thought while nodding. Fine then. Let's fight. Grinning, Carnage Kabuto led Deku into the combat experimentation room, which happened to be a large room with giant white tiles covering the floor, walls, and ceiling. Pretty big, huh? Said Carnage Kabuto as Deku and himself squared off against each other. It's the largest room in this facility. This is where we fight to test our combat ability, which means there's plenty of room here to kick your ass. The monster held an excited grin on his face. Let's start the killing. All of a sudden, Carnage Kabuto was enveloped in intense flames. Once the flames died down, Carnage Kabuto curiously looked over to the source of the flames, having been left completely unharmed by the intense heat. Huh, still alive are you? He asked, noticing that the one who attacked him was the cyborg from before. Izuku didn't expect Genos to recover so fast after the monster punched him into the wall, so he was also surprised by Genos' sudden attack, but still tried to stop him. Genos wasn't strong enough to fight Beast King earlier today, and he most definitely wasn't strong enough to beat Carnage Kabuto. Genos, stand down. You have no chance of defeating him, told Izuku, knowing that while Genos had a lot of firepower, none of it would do any good against Carnage Kabuto's powerful shell. While hurt from the blow he took earlier, Genos stood to his full height and focused his attention on the monster. No need to worry about me, sensei. I will handle him, told Genos, ignoring Izuku's order as he charged at the monster. This was his moment to prove he deserved to be sensei's student, and he won't let him down. Genos dashed across the field like a blur and landed a powerful spin kick across Carnage Kabuto's chest. Not that it did any damage to the monster. Genos circled the monster, continuously firing powerful beams of fire at him. Not once did Carnage Kabuto dodge any of the cyborg's attacks. Jumping into the air, Genos front-flipped before he pulled his right arm back for a finishing move. A smoky, but unharmed Carnage Kabuto looked up at the incoming cyborg with an arrogant grin on his face. You fool. Genos' eyes glowed. Machine gun blow, exclaimed the cyborg before he delivered a barrage of powerful and destructive punches down on the monster. However, Carnage Kabuto countered by throwing a punch almost lazily at the cyborg. The punch broke through Genos' barrage and connected with his body, throwing him back while he bounced along the floor several times before Deku caught him in his arms. Deku looked down at the injured cyborg in his arms. I told you that you couldn't handle him. Just like many heroes, both in this world and in his homeworld, Genos believed himself to be stronger than he accurately was. The curse of power, as Izuku liked to call it. The cyborg might have fought monsters, but he never fought anything like Carnage Kabuto before. Perhaps today's experience will teach Genos that there are people and creatures out there in the world who are much stronger than him. With his face cracked and his left eye destroyed, Genos glared at the smug monster with hatred. Let me take him, pleaded Genos, who aimed his left incinerator cannon at the monster before firing the most powerful beam of fire that he could come up with. The powerful beam of fire could have incinerated tiger-level and even demon-level monsters, but Carnage Kabuto was in a whole different league than them. Taking a deep breath of air, Carnage Kabuto blew the air in his lungs out at the beam of fire, not only stopping it in its tracks, but also repelling it back at Genos and Deku. With his breath? Impossible! Cried out Genos in disbelief, watching as his most powerful beam was repelled back at himself with just the monster's breath. Before the flames could reach them, Izuku focused One for All into his right forefinger and aimed it at the incoming flames. One for All, flick bolt. Izuku flicked his finger and with the use of One for All, released a powerful beam of pressurized air at the incoming stream of fire. The concentrated burst of air dispersed the flames while also hitting Carnage Kabuto in the chest, causing an explosion of wind. When the dust settled, Carnage Kabuto could be seen without a single scratch on his shell, although he had been pushed back a couple of feet. Not bad. That tickled a little, chuckled Carnage Kabuto, patting his chest where he took no damage from Izuku's finger flick. He even stuck his tongue out at the S-Class Rank 1 hero, mockingly. Genos, I want you to wait for me by the exit, told Deku, who stood up to face off against Carnage Kabuto. But sensei, I can dash. Genos, if you want there to be any chance of me accepting you as my student, then you will follow my orders and stay by the exit. This time, Izuku pressed his full authority onto the cyborg, who could only gulp nervously, feeling an invisible pressure press down on his body. If you continue to fight, you will lose and you will die. How will you be able to avenge your family if you're dead? Genos widened his eyes. He wanted to prove himself to Deku so badly that he went out of his way to fight the monster that was so obviously above him in raw power and defense, even if it killed him. He had even ignored Deku's orders to stand down. I'm so foolish. I still have so much to learn, thought Genos, chastising himself while he pushed himself back up to his feet, struggling to do so. Very well, sensei. I wish you luck on your fight. The cyborg turned and walked towards the exit with a noticeable limp, leaving Izuku and Carnage Kabuto in the room. With Genos no longer in the way, Izuku could now get serious. The number one hero lost his smile and walked towards an arrogant Carnage Kabuto with both of his fists clenched. Deku's serious demeanor only further amused the dragon-level monster. Oh, I see it. I see it. You're supposed to be strong, mocked Carnage Kabuto, while pointing both fingers at the hero. Strongest man in the world, they say. Look at you, oozing with confidence. You must think that you can get away with anything, said Deku, whose green eyes seemed to glow. I think it's about time someone teaches you a lesson. Carnage Kabuto chuckled in amusement before disappearing, moving faster than a being of his size should be capable of. Laughing, the monster ran along a wall before appearing behind Izuku with his fist pulled back for a powerful punch. Such speed, thought Genos, who was watching by the lone doorway, shocked to see a creature as big and bulky as Carnage Kabuto move so fast. He's even faster than Mosquito Girl. Smirking, Carnage Kabuto threw a punch at the hero's back to see him become a bloody smear across the floor. However, that didn't happen, for instead, Deku suddenly turned around to face the monster in an instant, and with his right hand, redirected the monster's punch away while throwing one of his own with his left hand, all the while focusing 30% of One for All's power into his full cowl technique. Full cowl, spark punch. Deku punched Carnage Kabuto in the chest, causing an explosion of power to wash over the room. Genos had to keep himself steady to not be blown away by the explosion. Before the smoke could subside, Deku was thrown out of the smoke cloud, courtesy of Carnage Kabuto. You fool. Quickly recovering, Izuku spun while in midair and landed on the wall with his feet before kicking off of it, launching him back at the monster, who crossed his arms, just in time to block Midoriya's flying dropkick. Although the force of the blow pushed back the monster a few hundred feet, both monster and hero size each other up before, in a blur, both disappear and reappear in the center of the room, throwing a barrage of punches at each other that was so fast that it looked like they were throwing 10 punches every second. Most of the thrown punches were countered by the others, which resulted in miniature shockwaves, while the punches that did hit were mostly ignored. They're both evenly matched, thought Genos, who ignored how the wind blew back his hair every time a collision of fists conjured a shockwave. Not even his mechanical eye and advanced sensors could keep up with the speeds of their punches. Charging up full cowl to 40%, Deku's strength and speed increased drastically. All of a sudden, Deku caught both of Carnage Kabuto's arms and squeezed. The monster widened his eyes in surprise when his arm's armor-like shell cracked under the hero's growing strength. Is he getting stronger? Carnage Kabuto didn't get much time to think about that, because with both of his arms seized, he had no way to protect himself from Deku, who jumped and threw a powerful upward kick which hit under the monster's chin. Carnage Kabuto's mouth was forced closed by Deku's kick, which also propelled him up to the ceiling, which he bounced off of, and had him thrown back down to Deku, who jumped up to meet the monster in midair. With a battle cry, Deku threw an uppercut at the falling monster, but Carnage Kabuto managed to avoid the attack by flying back up into the air using his wings. At least, Carnage Kabuto thought he dodged the attack. Even if Deku didn't physically hit the monster, the power of his punch blew an incredibly powerful gust of wind that tossed Carnage Kabuto back and forcefully pressed him against the ceiling. With the gust of wind trapping Carnage Kabuto to the ceiling, the monster could only roar in pain once Deku jumped back up and punched him in the chest, forcing Carnage Kabuto to cough up blood while pieces of his shell fell off. The ceiling itself cracked up with some rubble, falling to the floor. "Get off me!" yelled a panicked Carnage Kabuto, who kicked Midoriya away now that the winds had died off. Izuku backflipped before he landed back on the floor while skidding backwards a couple of feet. Carnage Kabuto dropped back down to the floor and landed less gracefully than Deku, due to his injuries. "How is this possible?" wondered a panting Carnage Kabuto who looked over himself to see the extent of his injuries. His powerful shell, which could brush off bullets and rockets, has been severely damaged with pieces that have fallen off and a crack covering nearly his entire body. The monster could also taste the blood that was pooling in his mouth, meaning that he suffered internal damage too, but his regenerative abilities had mostly healed him of such injuries. How can a human be this strong? Angry over his injuries, Carnage Kabuto charged at Izuku with a scowl, and his fists clenched. "Take this, you bastard." "I punched him with nearly half of One for All's power, and he can still move so fast," thought Izuku, honestly surprised that Carnage Kabuto survived being hit with 40% of One for All's power, even if it was spread throughout his body when he used full cowl. That shell of his must have absorbed most of the impact, and I'm guessing he has some sort of regenerative ability to heal what damage I did to him, which means I need to take him out in one blow. Nodding to himself, Izuku decided to go all out and use 100% of One for All to finish off Carnage Kabuto. Deku tensed his body and brought his right leg back, pulling back his right arm while preparing a punch that focused 100% of One for All's power. Lightning engulfed Deku's arm, which bulged in size, while red veins began to stretch across the bulging muscular arm. One for All 100%. Big bang. Before Izuku could use his move, Carnage Kabuto suddenly stopped his charge and instead jumped as far away as he could until his back was pressed against the wall. Huh. An injured Dr. Genus, who had been watching the battle between the world's strongest man and his strongest creation from the door, was left with his mouth hanging wide open in sheer disbelief. Impossible. Carnage Kabuto retreating? A heavily sweating Carnage Kabuto breathed in heavily as he stared at his opponent in terrified disbelief. If I stayed on the attack, he would have killed me, thought the monster, having sensed an unbelievable amount of power coming from the human. The hero was strong ever since the start of the battle, but the monster noticed that the longer they fought, the more powerful the hero seemed to become. "Bastard has been holding back on me," thought Carnage Kabuto, forgetting his fear once his rage started to take over. The monster didn't like to be looked down on, especially by some worthless human. "You think you can look down on me?" roared Carnage Kabuto, who began transforming. Dr. Genus widened his eyes in horror. "Oh no. It looks like he's going into another rampage." The scientist's security system detected Carnage Kabuto's transformation and emitted an alarm while also locking down the entire facility. The only exit to the combat experimentation room closed behind him, trapping him with the two heroes and the out-of-control Carnage Kabuto. Deku narrowed his eyes as he watched Carnage Kabuto's muscles bulge disgustingly. The monster's damaged shell shattered as his muscles became too large to contain in them. Carnage Kabuto's horn grew longer in size and became incredibly sharp. Once his transformation was complete, Carnage Kabuto glared down at Deku with his blood-red eyes. The monster's disgustingly large purple muscles and green veins nearly seemed to glow in the dark, especially when the experimentation room changed in appearance, and now it looked like everyone was standing on an invisible floor. "Carnage mode!" bellowed Carnage Kabuto, who stomped his feet on the ground, cracking the floor with ease. "When I get like this, I lose control for a whole week and my lust for death cannot be quelled," told the transformed monster. "When I'm done killing you, I'm going to head to town and go on a killing rampage on Dash." Deku heard enough. Carnage Kabuto was interrupted when Deku punched the monster in his left cheek. Having appeared before the monster in an instant, full cowl now being powered with 60% of One for All. Green blood spurted out of Carnage Kabuto's open mouth, but the monster quickly recovered and punched the hero back. Deku had to clench his teeth to suppress the wince from Carnage Kabuto's punch, which bounced him off two walls and the ceiling. The hero stopped himself in midair by using float, but he was quickly pounced on by Carnage Kabuto. He could only cross his arms across his chest to lessen the impact of Carnage Kabuto's next punch, which was stronger than the previous one. The punch launched him back, but Izuku quickly wrapped a black whip around the monster's neck to stop him from going far and slingshot back at Carnage Kabuto, who was distracted trying to stop the whip from choking him to block or avoid Deku's shoulder bash. Deku could feel and hear Carnage Kabuto's bones breaking, but the monster was in so much rage that he ignored the pain and instead threw a barrage of punches down on Deku, who deflected them with his hands, although more than a few managed to hit its mark. "Time to finish this. Die, 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 die," roared Carnage Kabuto as he threw punch after punch down on the hero to turn his bones into dust and his muscles into a paste. Filled with so much rage because of his transformation, Carnage Kabuto couldn't process the fact that Deku suddenly vanished in a flash of green light, nor the fact that he could no longer feel his arms, due to the hero having ripped them off in that instant. Carnage Kabuto soon figured out that something was wrong when a dreadful apprehension filled his body, forcing him to calm down from his murderous rage, if just for a moment. The reason for the apprehension that made Carnage Kabuto break out in a sweat was because of Deku. The world's strongest hero was enveloped in a combination of emerald flames and lighting, giving Deku a very terrifying appearance. The hero gathered the power of One for All into his right arm, which was bulging and covered in red veins. So much power flowed through Deku's arm that it caused his glove and the right side of his hero costume to disintegrate into nothingness. Deku's hero costume was made and designed with the most durable material in the world so that it could withstand blows from powerful monsters and not tear. Yet, the durable material couldn't withstand the full power of One for All being focused at one point. It wasn't only Izuku's costume that was being damaged, but the surrounding environment as well. As Deku focused One for All into his arm, the ground all around him cracked and cratered as the entire underground facility shook as if it was hit with an earthquake of a magnitude of 6 or higher. One for All 100%. Big Bang Blast. For everyone, it nearly seemed like time stopped once Deku threw a very simple punch that wasn't anywhere near Carnage Kabuto. For what seemed like forever, nothing happened. Then an explosion of bright light blinded everyone in the room, as well as a powerful gust of wind that blew in every direction. Dr. Genus and even Genos had to hold themselves to the walls just so they wouldn't be blown away. After 20 seconds of blinding white light, it eventually died down along with the powerful winds, allowing the scientist and hero to finally look and see what happened. For Dr. Genus, even his genius mind couldn't comprehend the result of the sheer, overwhelming power of Deku's punch. One moment, Carnage Kabuto was standing there after getting both his arms ripped off, and the next, he was just gone. There was no blood, bone, or anything that could be used to identify the existence of Carnage Kabuto. He was just gone. Everything facing the direction of Deku's outstretched fist was gone, including the wall. From the hole where the wall used to be, Dr. Genus could see that it led to the surface, and for miles, the forest had simply vanished, leaving behind an empty wasteland of what used to be a vast land of flora and fauna. He eradicated Carnage Kabuto with one punch, thought the scientist, who was only now processing the fact that his most powerful creation was now nothing but dust in the wind. The hero's punch didn't even leave a scrap of Carnage Kabuto, having obliterated him out of existence. While relieved that his sensei defeated the powerful monster, Genos was just as shocked as the scientist to see the aftermath of Deku's punch. What destructive power! It's almost like Sensei's fist has the power of an atomic bomb, if not several, thought the cyborg. A slightly sweaty Deku looked at the wasteland of what used to be forests and mountains before looking at the fist responsible for said destruction. "Maybe I should have held back to 80%, muttered the hero, realizing that he may have gone a bit overboard with defeating the monster. For 10 years he had lived as both a vigilante and an official hero. Very few monsters forced him to use more than 60% of One for All. Carnage Kabuto was powerful, giving him no choice but to finish him off when he entered Carnage mode. Fearing that Genos and Dr. Genus would be killed in the crossfire of the monster's rampage. Turning away from the massive hole he made, which was designed to withstand powerful attacks from the House of Evolution's creations, Izuku Midoriya eyed the injured scientist who caused this mess in the first place. "Dr. Genus, I am placing you under arrest for illegal experimentation, destruction of property, attempted kidnapping, and attempted murder. Please don't resist or I'll be forced to detain you, he said, all with a smile on his face. Dr. Genus sniffed, but shook his head. I won't resist, not to you. You have taught me a valuable lesson today. Izuku's smile slightly widened upon hearing that. It wasn't just innocence that he liked to save. Oh, and what lesson is that? You showed me that it isn't humanity that needs to change. Instead, I realize that I am after destroying the House of Evolution and taking in Dr. Genus. Izuku spent the last few days completing his duties as principal of Hero Academy and dealing with the occasional monster that popped up now and then. The only difference in his usual routine was Genos, who made it his duty to follow him around everywhere he went so he could learn how to get stronger. Sometimes, Izuku felt tempted to remind Genos that he wasn't officially his student yet until he passed the hero certification exam with full marks, but he simply didn't have the heart to send the cyborg away. Besides, he didn't see any harm in letting Genos follow him around, although he did have to put his foot down when the cyborg tried to follow him into a bathroom stall. While usually swamped with hero and principal work, Izuku managed to take a day off, which was a rare occurrence for the S-class rank 1 hero. Mysterious beings don't tend to take days off, but it has been quiet for these past couple of days. The mysterious beings that did attack were tiger-level threats or lower, so they were handled by the local heroes who were looking to rise in the rankings. And since today is Saturday, any principal duties were practically non-existent, giving him all the time today for himself. Deku took his hero duties seriously, but he recognized that working all the time was unhealthy and could lead to problems. Sadly, that was a lesson he learned from All Might during the villain attack on the USJ. He had seen the discreet Signal 13 sent to Aizawa and knew that All Might had used up his available time and couldn't make it to the lesson. Never would Izuku say anything negative about his role model, but he had always wondered what would have happened if All Might hadn't overworked himself and been there for when the villains attacked. Would have the villains been defeated faster? Would have the warp villain been beaten before he could use his quirk to divide everyone? Would the villain not have time to send Izuku away to this world if All Might was there? Izuku sighed and shook his head. No point fixating on what-ifs. With all the time to himself, Izuku decided to take a walk around City F on his own. Genos would usually be following him around like a lost puppy, but he was visiting a scientist for a maintenance check. Tatsumaki was also undisposed as she was called away to deal with a mysterious being threat in City X. Even Fubuki was busy, gone off recruiting some B-class heroes to join her Blizzard group. As the number 1 hero, Izuku was easily recognizable by the average civilian, especially since his face is often on billboards, televisions, clothing, and even toys. That was why he was wearing a simple pair of blue jeans and a green hoodie that had the words "hoodie" printed in the middle of it. He kept the hood up to hide his messy green hair and upper face, doing his best to remain inconspicuous. Not that it worked much with how tall and muscular he was compared to the average citizen. While walking down a path, Izuku stopped in front of a store that had a TV display window. I wonder if there's a place nearby that sells katsudon, Izuku muttered to himself, having a craving for his favorite food. The terrorist group responsible for the riots call themselves the Paradisers. Izuku turned towards the TV display window that had 7 TVs showing the news about a new terrorist group. Along with the female news anchor, the screen also showed a video of a building that was recently destroyed by the terrorist group. They have destroyed a high-rise building in City F, and the situation seems to be spiraling out of control. We have just learned the identity of their leader, spoke the news anchor before a close-up picture of a smirking man with a scar across his nose and a large head appeared on the screen. This is Hammerhead, a B-class criminal who has been involved in several violent incidents in the past. He's a man of large stature, standing at 6'6", tall, and weighing 462 pounds. According to a police report, he fought 20 men in a street brawl and sent each of them to the hospital. Of all the times for terrorists to cause havoc, why did it have to be today and in the same city I'm in? Izuku sighed. Maybe I won't be needed. Sneck supervises City F, so I'm sure he and other heroes are already on the case. The Paradisers sent the following message to this TV station. We will continue to riot until food, clothing, and shelter are provided free of charge to those who do not work, amongst other unintelligible demands. Like Hammerhead, The group is made up of unemployed young men with no motivation to work, continued the news anchor. They're rioting because they don't want to work? Thought a baffled Izuku. That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Reports indicate that they all have shaven heads, making them not only uniform in appearance but also quite intimidating. It is advised that those who encounter any shaven-haired men on the street should leave the area immediately. Never mind. That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard, thought Izuku, staring at the television screens in bewilderment. All the Paradisers being bald is weird enough, but for the news anchor to tell the public to run away if they saw a bald man on the street? Does the news station not realize that there are a lot of bald men in the world who aren't members of the Paradisers? I need to send a complaint to the news station when this is all done and over with, knowing that he can't just walk away while the Paradisers run rampant throughout the city, especially since they've resorted to destroying buildings. Izuku bent his knees and leapt up into the air, surprising the nearby people who felt the wind shift upwards by the force of Izuku's jump. With a single jump, Izuku reached the rooftop of the high-rise building. Once on the rooftop, Izuku looked around to see if he could spot any sign of the Paradisers. Izuku narrowed his gaze when he saw rising smoke coming from a few blocks away. The hero ran across the rooftop and leapt towards the source of the smoke. After leaping over several city blocks, Izuku glided down to the road, and once he landed, Izuku took in his surroundings. It didn't take a genius to figure out that the Paradisers had been through the area. Izuku looked around and saw that the source of the smoke was a pile of rubble that used to be a high-rise building. The street was also filled with destroyed vehicles and the unconscious bodies of nearly 100 police officers in riot gear. Already, several ambulances have been called and medics were currently working on treating the injured police officers, as well as a hero. Izuku recognized the hero when he saw the helmet and bicycle. Isn't that Mumen Rider? He didn't personally know Mumen Rider, since they never see each other during patrols or monster attacks, but from a few meetings with the Hero Association Council that Izuku attended, one of the topics spoken about was Mumen Rider's lack of desire to move up to B-class after holding the title of C-class rank 1 for nearly half a year. The area has been closed off with police tape to keep the curious civilians from getting any closer to the wreckage. There were also some police officers around who lacked the riot gear that their unconscious comrades were wearing, meaning that they arrived after the Paradisers. Izuku walked past the crowd of civilians and ducked underneath the police tape. A nearby police officer noticed the large man in civilian clothing going past the police tape and moved to stop him. "Sir, you need to stay back behind the tape." "No need for that, officer. I'm here to help," told Izuku before he pulled down his hood, revealing his face to the public. Everyone quickly recognized the face of the S-Class Rank 1 hero, Deku. "Mr. Deku," stuttered the police officer who paled over the thought that he was trying to order around the world's strongest hero. Apologies. I didn't know it was you." Deku bellowed out a laugh that slightly shook the ground. "No need to worry about that. You were just doing your job. Tell me, what happened here?" he asked while looking towards the unconscious officers who were being treated by the medics. "It was the Paradisers. They've been causing havoc across City F all morning, throwing cars, beating officers, and they've recently destroyed a building. We sent in a riot team to deal with them, but they were completely overwhelmed," explained the police officer while trying to ignore the civilians who were either gossiping with one another about seeing the number 1 hero in person or were taking pictures of said hero with their phones. Izuku ignored the excited civilians and kept his attention on the police officer. "What are the numbers of the Paradisers?" "They've been last reported to have 23 members, including their leader, Hammerhead." "How does a group of 23 criminals manage to defeat nearly 100 police officers in riot gear and destroy an entire building?" asked Deku, a little bewildered. "True, Hammerhead must be strong to earn his B-class villain ranking, but he shouldn't be able to defeat the overwhelming numbers of police officers in riot gear, even with 22 others." Izuku also noticed a lack of explosive residue near the destroyed building, indicating that no explosives were used to topple the building. This only begs the question, how did they destroy an entire building without explosives? The Paradisers are all wearing some sort of high-tech suit of armor. Not sure how they got their hands on that kind of tech, but eyewitness reports say that one of the Paradisers destroyed the building with one punch, explained the officer who gulped at the thought of fighting a group of villains with such powerful high-tech armor. Only one paradiser destroyed the building, muttered Deku, who didn't like the sound of that. If one could destroy a high-rise building on their own, then an entire group could cause a lot of havoc in little time. That would class them as a demon-level threat. He was also curious about how the terrorist group managed to get their hands on high-tech suits of armor that gave them greatly enhanced strength. Do you happen to know which way the paradisers are heading? Izuku asked the police officer. The police officer was more than happy to point down the street. Last we checked, they were heading toward the direction of the woods. Deku offered a grateful nod to the police officer. Thank you, officer. You have been most helpful. Now, it's time for the paradisers to face justice, exclaimed Deku, who ran down the road, looking like a green blur to everyone who was watching. It didn't take Deku long to find the paradisers in the woods. He only wished he found them all in one piece. The paradisers are dead? Izuku examined the destroyed part of the woods he was in, finding nothing but uprooted trees, large boulders, and the headless corpses of the paradisers. As the police officer said, the paradisers were all equipped with full-body suits of armor, but it would appear that the armor didn't do much to protect them against whoever or whatever they crossed. Wait a second. Where's Hammerhead? Izuku asked himself, spotting no sign of Hammerhead's body among the pile of corpses that were once the paradisers. Hammerhead's large head would be easy to recognize in the pile of others, so the fact that it was missing meant that he was still alive, at least for now. Izuku turned his head and saw a large boulder fly into the sky from somewhere deeper in the woods, and watched as the flying boulder hit what looked like a giant pile of gold feces on top of a nearby high-rise building. I swear, nobody has any taste in style these days, thought Deku, wondering why anyone in their right mind would want a giant piece of solid gold sculpted into the shape of feces on top of their building. Ignoring the awful taste of design, Izuku dashed towards the direction in which the thrown boulder came from. Hammerhead could be found running through the forest with a kunai stuck in the back of his large head. The villain's goal of destroying Zenira's building failed after the multimillionaire sent his bodyguard to stop the paradisers. The paradisers had the numbers and strength, yet Zenira's bodyguard was too fast for them to handle. All of Hammerhead's followers were butchered within seconds, and while Hammerhead managed to put up a fight, he still lost to the speedster. That was why the criminal faked his death when the bodyguard threw a kunai in the back of his head and was now retreating. That was close. Good thing that Ninja Freak hit my head. My skull has always been several times thicker than a normal person's, thought an angry Hammerhead while he ran as far away as he could from Zenira's bodyguard. I don't know who that guy was, but one day, I'm going to kill Hammerhead's thoughts came to a halt when he saw someone running in his direction. Now what? Hammerhead stopped and stared at the green-haired man who he saw was wearing a simple green hoodie and jeans. Who the hell are you? He asked, finding the man familiar for some reason. I swear I've seen his face somewhere before. Izuku Midoriya looked Hammerhead up and down, while purposely studying the villain's suit of armor. While the suit of armor looked exactly like the ones that the other paradisers were wearing, Hammerhead's was painted with fire designs to help him stand out as the leader. Hammerhead, I am from the Hero Association, and I'm here to take you into custody. When Hammerhead responded by throwing a punch, Izuku wasn't one bit surprised, nor caught off guard. Most villains tended to throw the first punch whenever they encountered heroes, so he had been expecting it from the moment they made eye contact. That's why Izuku was so quick to raise a hand to catch the punch, but he was honestly surprised by the power of the blow. He still managed to keep a hold of Hammerhead's thrown fist, but Izuku felt his hand go slightly numb from the power of the punch, even when using full cowl at 3%. Even though he successfully caught Hammerhead's punch, the shockwave from the impact caused the surrounding area to explode as if a powerful explosion went off. Nearby trees and boulders either shattered or were blown away by the shockwave whilst the ground cratered. When the dust from the explosion dispersed, Hammerhead openly gaped at the hero who was holding onto his outstretched fist, having blocked his punch with ease. How? This suit of armor enhances my strength to the point where I can bring down a whole building with one punch, and he stopped it with one hand, thought Hammerhead, noticing that the only actual damage he did to the hero was destroy his hoodie, which was shredded by the explosive shockwave, leaving the hero shirtless. Wait a minute, I know you. Why, you're Deku. stuttered the villain, who only now recognized the man who's known as the world's strongest hero. That explained why his suit didn't so much as scratch the hero. That's gonna sting for a bit, muttered Deku, referring to his stinging right hand which he used to block Hammerhead's punch. That suit is impressive. If I were to gauge its strength, I would say it's around the level of Pori Pori Prisoner, he thought, impressed, but weary that the suit of armor could give a B-class villain like Hammerhead strength to rival that of an S-class hero. Deku was quick to return his attention to the villain. That suit is troublesome. Take it off. Small sparks of emerald lightning appeared across Deku's body as he increased the power of his full cowl technique from 3% to 5%. Without giving the villain a chance to respond, Deku punched Hammerhead in his chest. The punch shattered the suit of high-tech armor like glass, while also knocking Hammerhead out at the same time, leaving the B-class villain naked and unconscious on the floor. Izuku was about to reach down and arrest Hammerhead when he sensed a source of killing intent coming from his left. In the blink of an eye, Izuku's left hand snapped upwards to catch a thrown kunai that was aimed at his head. Izuku's eyes widened when a man appeared out of nowhere and thrust his sword right at Izuku's left eye. Fast! Just as the sword was only a few millimeters away from piercing Deku's eye, the hero caught the blade with his hand, stopping it in its tracks. The owner of said sword tried to push and pull the sword out of the hero's grip, but found that it wouldn't budge. It's not budging, thought the surprised assailant. Speedo sounds Sonic. Be careful. You could have poked someone's eye out with this thing, joked a smiling Deku. Here, let me help with that. Clenching his fist, the blade shattered under Deku's grip. Jumping away to a safe distance, Sonic looked over his destroyed sword. You're that hero everyone is always talking about. Deku, isn't it? Deku nodded while keeping his guard up around the man before him. The young man who just attempted to kill him had black hair and was adorned with a tight bodysuit with plates of armor covering some of his shoulders and arms, while a long purple scarf was wrapped around his neck. That I am. I take it you're the one who dealt with the Paradisers, isn't that right? Those bald-headed fools were unfortunate to attempt an attack on my employer while I was still under contract, answered Sonic with a cold stare. You see, I'm a perfectionist, so I complete all my jobs with 100% efficiency. That's why I can't allow Hammerhead to live. I can't let you walk away either. Izuku narrowed his eyes at the ninja, tensing up for a fight that was certain to occur. Oh, you were able to read my attacks, twice. This I cannot allow. Born in a ninja village, I've been honing and perfecting my techniques since the early days of childhood, yet you saw right through them. This I cannot allow. He reeks of killing intent, thought a tense, but still smiling Deku, who was getting a bad vibe from the man before him. My pride won't have it. I don't care who you are. I can't let you simply walk away. In a near instant, Sonic appeared behind Izuku in a burst of speed that could nearly be considered teleporting. Izuku sensed the ninja behind him and was quick to turn around to throw a fast punch, but the ninja disappeared and reappeared a couple of feet away from Izuku. He even had his back turned to Deku, looking not one bit worried over facing off against the S-class rank 1 hero. He's fast, thought Deku. He had thrown his punch with full cowl at 5%, and yet the ninja dodged it effortlessly. Although, that smile of his is a bit creepy. During the split second that the ninja appeared behind him, Izuku caught a glance of the man's expression before he disappeared again, and what he saw was a bloodthirsty grin. If Izuku's smile brought hope and joy to the populace, then the ninja's smile would be the complete opposite, only bringing fear and terror. With a wide grin and a chuckle, Sonic jumped up into the air in a burst of speed so fast that he caused a shockwave from the motion. The ninja started jumping from tree to tree, moving so fast that he barely appeared as a black blur. He was moving so fast that it looked like there were several of him moving around at once. Each time the ninja jumped off a tree or the ground, a shockwave occurred. Izuku's eyes blazed around the area as he kept track of the ninja's movements, even if Sonic was moving at speeds faster than the speed of sound. What incredible speed! Every time he jumps, he breaks the sound barrier. No wonder the Paradisers were massacred so easily. They likely died before they had any idea what was happening, thought Deku, who had only ever seen such speed among a handful of humans, himself included. Deku narrowed his eyes in suspicion. But this speed, those movements, why are they so familiar? He wondered, seeing a very big resemblance in Sonic's moves to that of a certain S-class hero. What do you think of this speed that breaks the sound barrier? Of these shockwaves? Can you even see me? Thought Sonic while jumping all over the area and keeping his eyes focused on the hero so he could choose the right moment to strike. Sonic chose that moment after he jumped off a tree and aimed himself at the back of the hero. There you are. To Sonic's disbelief, the hero turned his head to look right at him, even as he was moving faster than the speed of sound. Bastard, thought Sonic before he spun forward in a series of very fast flips to gain momentum. Wind blade kick, exclaimed Sonic, who stopped flipping before aiming an axe kick down on the hero's head. With the combination of his speed, as well as the momentum from his flips, Sonic's kick now had the power to cut through steel. Deku widened his eyes upon recognizing the ninja's attack. His moves are exactly like flashy flashes, he thought, recognizing Sonic's move as the same one that the S-class rank 13 hero uses. So confident in his skill, Sonic was left baffled when he witnessed the hero step aside to dodge his wind blade kick. The ninja's bafflement didn't last long. Not after Deku landed an uppercut into his chest. Sonic's mouth opened to let out a silent scream, whilst he felt all his ribs shatter upon impact with the hero's fist. However, he did manage to let out a scream of agony once the force of Izuku's punch propelled him high into the sky, disappearing into the horizon. Izuku only realized what he did once he saw the ninja fade away in the distance. Oops, kind of panicked there for a moment, muttered Deku, guessing that he used too much power in his punch. Recognizing the ninja's moves as the same ones Flashy Flash used had honestly surprised Izuku, and while the revelation only distracted him for a second, it was more than enough time for the ninja to land a possible blow on him. Luckily, Izuku managed to use full cowl at 40% capacity to dodge the kick, but in his panic to knock aside the dangerous individual, Izuku forgot to lessen one for all's output when he threw his punch. So instead of simply knocking out the ninja as he intended, he had punched him through the sky and possibly killed him. Ah, I'm sure he's fine, said Izuku, waving off his worry. The villain was S-class in terms of power level, so he likely survived the punch and the landing. It probably knocked him out, but he'll live. Still, the ninja proved to be exceptionally fast and deadly, even using the same moves as Flashy Flash, although not as efficiently or as fast. The villain was fast, but Flashy Flash was much faster. Hell, it often took Deku using full cowl at nearly 100% output just to surpass him in terms of speed. I better head back and report this to headquarters. City Z, Deku's apartment. Was he really that fast? Asked Fubuki, who as usual, invited herself into Izuku's apartment. She sat on one of the chairs near the couch that Izuku was currently sitting on. Izuku leaned back into the couch cushion and nodded. Very fast. If he had applied to the hero registry, he would have made it to S-class easily. Bah. If I was the one who met him, I could have destroyed him. You should have called me. I could have dealt with him for you, remarked Tatsumaki, who lay back across the other side of the couch. Even though she was lying down on the couch, Tatsumaki's feet couldn't touch Izuku's legs due to her short height. I do not doubt that. The guy was fast, but his speed wouldn't matter if either of you two used your psychic abilities on him, stated Izuku in complete honesty. The ninja might move faster than the speed of sound, but all that speed didn't matter much if he was caught in a psychic grip by either of the psychic sisters. Even Fubuki, who was the weakest of the two, could have beaten the ninja if she got to use her abilities on him before he made a move. Difficult but not impossible. Fubuki was honestly surprised by Izuku's high praise and stared down at her knees so to hide the blush that she knew was coloring her cheeks. Izuku saying that the B-class hero could defeat the S-class villain made Fubuki's heart skip a beat and raised her confidence sky high. Tatsumaki, on the other hand, knew that she could have defeated the S-class villain, but she glared at her sister once she noticed Fubuki's blush. One compliment and Izuku turns Fubuki into a blushing schoolgirl. A knock on the door had Izuku stand up to answer it, leaving the living room to the sisters, who glared at each other with sparks clashing between their eyes. Their glaring contest ended the moment Izuku returned, although they were surprised to see a cyborg following after him. Ladies, this is Genos. He'll be taking the hero certification exam in a few days, and if he passes, I've promised to take him on as a student, said Izuku, introducing Genos to the Psychic Sisters. Genos bowed at a perfect 90-degree angle. Please take care of me. What? Yelled Tatsumaki, who levitated up from the couch so she could glare down at the cyborg who dared to think he was good enough to be named Deku's student. And what makes this can of bolts think he's good enough to be your student? Demanded the Esper while glaring daggers at Genos. Tatsumaki's aggression had Genos take a battle stance while heat built up in his mechanical arms. If it's a fight you are requesting, then dash. There will be no fighting in my apartment, told Izuku, who lightly chopped Genos across the top of his head. I only got this place fixed up. I don't need you or anyone else smashing it up again. Genos powered down his weapons and bowed to Izuku in apology. Apologies, sensei. If you're going to be my student, then my first lesson for you is to control your recklessness, scolded Izuku. You're skilled, but you overestimate your abilities when facing opponents more powerful than you. Beast King and Carnage Kabuto are two such examples. You need to recognize when to fight and when to take a step back. Take Tatsumaki, for instance. Izuku pointed up to the Esper, who was still glaring down at Genos. Without thinking, you got reckless and attempted to pick a fight with her. I can tell you now that if I didn't stop you, she would have defeated you in an instant, explained the #1 hero, seriously. Genos looked between the serious Izuku and smug Tatsumaki in disbelief. This little girl is that strong? What did you call me, you piece of scrap metal? Yelled Tatsumaki, whose power was starting to make the building shake. A black whip emerged from Izuku's shoulder and smacked the back of Tatsumaki's head, causing her to lose focus of her power. Tatsumaki is the S-Class Rank 2 hero for a reason, Genos. She's practically on the same level of power as myself. Genos nodded in understanding, although he found it hard to believe that the little girl was as strong as Deku. Fubuki kept quiet throughout the interaction, but now that it seemed like tensions were cooling down, she decided to speak up. I'm surprised that you accepted to have a student. Many people would give anything to be taught by the #1 hero. What can I say? Genos is stubborn, answered Izuku, who chuckled when he saw Genos puff out his chest as if he should be proud about that. Besides, he has the skill and firepower to be a good hero. Really? How strong would you class him? Asked Fubuki, knowing that Izuku had a great mind when it came to studying heroes and mysterious beings. He even helped her learn some new fighting techniques just by studying her abilities. At the moment, low S-Class, answered Izuku, much to Genos's pride. His firepower and mechanical body make him faster and stronger than Puri Prisoner. But he isn't as physically strong as, say, Tank Top Master or as fast as Flashy Flash. In other words, he's weak, stated an unimpressed Tatsumaki. Puri Prisoner is the weakest among the S-Class branch, so the cyborg being stronger than him didn't account for much, especially when Deku admitted that he wasn't as strong as the other weak S-Class heroes, like Tank Top Master and Flashy Flash. Deku ignored the prideful Tatsumaki and clapped Genos on his shoulder. Ignore Tatsu. She sees everyone as weak, so you should just get used to it. Hey, for now, I need you all to leave. I have a meeting with the Hero Association in 20 minutes and need to lock up. Being the S-Class Rank 1 hero held a lot of responsibilities, including having to attend meetings with Hero Association officials. Fubuki smirked at the #1 hero. Don't trust us alone in your apartment? No, I don't, deadpan Deku, making Fubuki pout. Fine, I got something to do anyway, remarked Tatsumaki, who opted to fly out the window instead of the door. Izuku wondered if he would have made friends with such eccentric characters in his own world. Shrugging his shoulders, Izuku locked the door behind him once Genos left, and then once outside, he took flight towards City A. City A, Hero Association HQ. Despite the vast distance between City A and City Z, Izuku made it just in time for his meeting with the Hero Association officials. I'm sorry, I hope I'm not late, apologized Izuku, who walked into the meeting room where everyone was already sitting down. The meeting room was made up of 14 chairs placed around a long meeting table where 12 men in suits sat, including bearded worker and bespectacled worker, whilst one female official sat with them. Another female official was standing by a nearby podium, and one side of the room held a monitor that covered the entire wall. Bearded worker smiled at the hero. There's nothing to apologize for, Deku. We know you're busy with your duties as a hero and as principal of the academy, he said, with the other Hero Association officials nodding their heads in agreement. Bespectacled worker chimed in. Besides, we were just about to start. Izuku took the only remaining seat beside the female official, who blushed upon being up close to the hero. Great. So then, what's our first agenda? Asked Izuku while opening up the file in front of him, which was given to everyone in the meeting. The first item of our agenda is regarding the C-Class Rank 1 hero, Mumen Rider, announced an official. He remains number 1 in both popularity and in completing heroic duties among the C-Class heroes. One of these duties was his attempt to stop the Paradisers, and while he may have failed, his actions do deserve a promotion to B-Class. Deku looked over the page, referring to the C-Class hero, Mumen Rider. That was the hero who attempted to stop the Paradisers by himself after they defeated the riot police. Isn't that right? The official nodded his head. Indeed he is. Izuku smiled brightly and nodded his head in agreement. Usually, I do not promote recklessness, especially from a hero who tried to fight the Paradisers by himself, but he was willing to risk his life to protect civilians. I support Mumen Rider's promotion to B-Class, although I'm sure it isn't that simple. Correct, Mr. Deku, said a female official who was sitting to Izuku's left. This isn't the first time Mumen Rider has been up for a promotion into B-Class. We have offered to promote him several times, but he has always refused without explaining why. A hero that doesn't want to rise in the ranks? Now I've seen it all, remarked a bemused Deku who earned a few chuckles from some of the officials. Izuku always thought that every hero wanted to rise in the ranks, but Mumen Rider was a rare phenomenon. Well, if he doesn't want to be promoted, then that's his right to refuse. Are there any objections? Asked an official who stood up. When no one objected, the official nodded. Then it is decided. Mumen Rider will remain the top-ranked Class C hero. Understood. I will inform him of our decision, answered another official. It's baffling. I don't know why he has no desire to move up to Class B, said an overweight official in bewilderment. As Deku said, a hero who doesn't want to rise in the ranks was very bizarre. Our next item on the agenda for our meeting, the 55th Hero Certification Exam and the circumstances surrounding it. For this exam, the total number of candidates is... The official turned to the female official standing by the podium. Over 11,000 with the exam offered at 6 different venues, answered the female official who looked up from what she was reading. That is an increase of more than 22% over the previous exam. Many of the Hero Association officials were amazed by the increase of candidates who wanted to be heroes, although the overweight official, the spectacled worker, and Deku didn't look as impressed as the other officials. Sadly, most of those candidates will likely not pass the exam, stated Deku, who folded his muscular arms across his chest. The overweight official nodded in agreement. Deku is correct. We mustn't be happy with simple quantity. Even with more candidates, if the quality of the heroes is reduced, then the numbers are meaningless, he said while turning his attention to the large monitor which showed 2 graphs. The graph on the left showed the increasing number of candidates over the past few months, but the graph on the right showed that the candidates who passed the hero certification exam in recent months have all dipped in quality. Which is why we should be even more critical during evaluations, told Deku. We need heroes that can defeat villains and mysterious beings when they appear, not to be taken out by some street thugs. Speaking of which, how are your students coming along? Asked bespectacled worker who held an interest in Hero Academy's progress. Deku's smile widened, and when he laughed, the room shook. Nobody reacted, having grown used to it. They are coming along swimmingly. Silver Fong and I agree that the upcoming graduating class will be more than ready to join C-Class, and even B-Class, once they've earned some experience on the field. Many of the Hero Association officials looked at each other in awe, believing that to be great news. The overweight official nodded his head in satisfaction. Very good. I and many others will be looking forward to seeing how the first graduates of Hero Academy complete their heroic duties. By the way, it's to my understanding that a person of interest will be taking the exam this time. Bearded worker nodded. Yes, sir, it hasn't been confirmed yet, but I'm confident that his participation will indeed occur, he said while looking at a profile of the person of interest. Who is this person of interest? Asked Deku, who looked over the file he was given and found the profile of a certain cyborg. The person of interest is Genos? The spectacled worker didn't miss the familiarity of Deku's tone of voice when speaking about the cyborg. You know of him, Deku? I have. Saved him during the Mosquito Girl incident, and he was with me when I apprehended Dr. Genus, answered the number 1 hero, to everyone's surprise. I agreed to take him on as my student if he passes the Hero Certification exam. This time, none of the Hero Association officials could hide their surprise, for none had ever been given the honor to learn from the world's strongest man. Even bespectacled worker can't help but be shocked. Oh, really? Is Genos really that impressive? Asked an official to Izuku's right. If we base on power, then he would be classed as low S class. However, he's young and reckless, which has nearly led him to get himself killed a few times already. Once he passes the Hero Certification exam, I'll be working on curbing that recklessness of his. If he's as powerful as you say, then wouldn't it be easier to just skip the formality and assign him a hero status? asked the overweight worker, turning to Deku. The Hero Association officials nearly jumped out of their seats when they witnessed the number one hero, Deku, no longer smiling. Deku's usual joyous smile was now replaced with a very stern frown. I believe that nobody should be given such special treatment, no matter who they are, said Deku, remembering a former friend of his who had been given special treatment ever since he discovered his quirk. I once had an old friend who is much like Genos, a brilliant individual who can dish out serious explosive firepower, but ever since he was a child, my friend was constantly praised and given special treatment by everyone around him. Izuku can still remember how his teachers from middle school would ignore all the times Bakugo verbally and physically bullied him, even when he used his quirk in public, which was considered illegal. Hopefully, UA beat that attitude out of him before he got his hero license. My friend was given special treatment because of his abilities, and because of that, he became a very arrogant and prideful person, believing himself to be God's gift to the world. I fear if we do the same to Genos or anyone else, they could end up like my old friend, and trust me, that is the last thing we need. Bearded worker and bespectacled worker shared a glance, having both noticed a saddened tone in the hero's words. Bespectacled worker then turned to Izuku with an understanding gaze. I agree. Heroes today are arrogant enough as it is. If we show others special treatment, then that arrogance may grow and fester out of control. Everyone was happy to see Izuku's smile return. Thank you. You all don't need to worry about the possibility of Genos failing, for I believe he'll pass both the written and physical tests with ease. Well then, if Deku has faith in Genos, then I don't see why we shouldn't, encouraged Bearded Worker, getting a few nods from those around the meeting table. If that's all, let us continue to our next agenda. The day of the Hero Certification exam was finally here, with Deku and Genos both arriving at Venue 6, which was taking place in a public shelter in City J. Izuku looked around the interior of the massive shelter, which had been divided up for each part of the physical exam. This brings back memories, said a smiling Deku who recalled the time he took his own Hero Certification exam. So far, nobody has been able to beat his records. By the looks of the candidates today, I don't have to worry about someone toppling my records just yet, he thought while looking over the hundreds of candidates who were either idling or performing in one of the several physical tests. Izuku didn't want to be mean, but he could tell that most, if not all of the candidates weren't suited for the hero lifestyle. Most of them were in good physical shape, but they were all wearing flashy costumes to try and stand out from the crowd, probably thinking that they might be able to pass by appearance alone. None have the strength or skill to pass the exam, and if they do, they won't live long enough to enjoy their roles as heroes. Wait, that's him, isn't it? The S-Class Rank 1 hero, Deku. Wow, Mr. Invincible himself came to see us participate. Deku is cuter in person. Such attention might have embarrassed Izuku 10 years back, but he had gotten used to the attention as the number one hero. With a smile, Izuku waved at the crowd of candidates who cheered or swooned. To the surprise of no one, Genos managed to pass the Hero Certification exam with a perfect score in both the physical and written exams. This says I'm now certified as a Class S hero, Genos told Izuku as they stood in the empty locker room, reading the certificate given to him. The cyborg shrugged his shoulders in disinterest. In the end, I'm sure these rankings mean very little. Izuku, leaning against a set of lockers, snorted over Genos' statement. You'd be surprised by the amount of heroes who would kill to join Class S. Genos blinked in confusion. Are the rankings that important? To most heroes, they are. Heroes are constantly trying to one-up each other in the rankings to get more public recognition and fame. The Hero Association also offers higher pay, benefits, and access to resources for those who rise high in the rankings. Really? Then I'm surprised that there aren't more heroes among Class S. They would have access to much wealth and resources, remarked a curious Genos. That would be putting it lightly, answered Izuku, who knew that Child Emperor and Metal Knight used their access to Hero Association resources to build all sorts of dangerous gadgets and robots. As to why more heroes aren't S-Class, it's because to do so, they need to rise to A-Class Rank 1 to be considered for a promotion into S-Class. Unfortunately, the current A-Class Rank 1 hero has been preventing other heroes from rising to S-Class. That's why they call him the Gatekeeper. I'm a little surprised you were allowed into Class S, for that would only be possible if the Gatekeeper permitted you. This Gatekeeper must be strong to keep a hold on their rank like that. Very strong. If he ever joined S-Class, he would be considered one of the strongest. Top 5, easily. Genos widened his eyes in surprise. He thought the A-Class Rank 1 hero to be strong, but not that strong. Izuku pushed off the lockers and patted Genos on the shoulder. Enough of that. You've got a briefing to take. Both Genos and Izuku leave the locker room with the number one hero, leading the cyborg towards the lecture hall. Both noticed how empty the shelter was now, meaning that most of the candidates had gone home after failing to pass the exam. Both stopped in front of Lecture Hall 3 where Genos was supposed to be given his briefing. Briefing shouldn't take too long, so I'll wait out here for you. Genos nodded before stepping into the lecture hall. The cyborg was surprised to see that the lecture hall was empty, except for the man in an oddly designed suit who was standing by the podium. Genos guessed that the man was the hero who was there to brief him. You've arrived. It's about time. Now, sit down so I can get this briefing underway, said the A-class hero, Snack. Genos took a seat in the front row of desks and folded his arms while staring at the hero. Congratulations on passing. To be honest, I am surprised that you passed at all, so unless you want your luck to go to waste, I better see you giving it your all, said Snack before pointing at Genos. And don't get cocky, got it? Keep your hero certified status in mind, and from here on out, I expect you to act modestly. After all, your face is going to be placed on the main page of the Hero Association website. Genos's uncaring blank stare was quick to annoy Snack. Did you hear me? Your stupid face is going to be seen by the whole world. If you don't want to humiliate yourself, Snack jumped onto the podium and began showing off his biting snake fist martial art to the newcomer. Snack finished off his showcasing by posing in his martial arts stance. Aspire to be an extinguished hero like me. Genos continued to coldly stare at Snack, making the A-class hero feel stupid after showing off his skills like that. That was until he heard clapping by the doorway. Bravo! That was an impressive show of skill, congratulated Deku, who clapped after witnessing Snack's martial art moves. Upon recognizing the world's strongest hero, Snack ended up paralyzed due to a mixture of awe, embarrassment, and fear. It's Deku, thought the A-class rank 38 hero, who realized that Deku just saw him show off to the rookie hero. If I'm not mistaken, that martial art style is biting snake fist, right? Asked Deku, recognizing the movements of said fighting style. Snack managed to recover from his paralysis long enough to answer the S-class rank 1 hero. It is, sir. Izuku laughed and waved his hand. None of that, sir, business. You can just call me Deku or Izuku, whichever works for you. Deku turned to Genos, who was patiently waiting in his seat. You ready to go, Genos? Yes, sensei, answered Genos, who stood up and followed Izuku out of the lecture hall. Now alone, Snack felt all his strength leave him and collapsed to the floor on his back, but held a smile on his face. Are you sure about this? Izuku couldn't help but ask as he and Genos faced off against one another in the middle of an abandoned quarry. Not long after Genos joined the Hero Registry and earned his S-class status, the cyborg had installed new mechanical upgrades onto his body to boost his power and performance. Immediately after, the cyborg asked Izuku to spar with him to test out his new upgrades. Seeing no reason not to, Izuku accepted, intending to teach his student a lesson on how to be an official hero. Hence, why they were in the middle of an abandoned quarry that was miles away from all signs of civilization. This far out, they didn't have to worry about injuring civilians or causing any unnecessary property damage. Confirmed Genos with a confident nod. Sensei, thank you for agreeing to my odd request. I appreciate it. I wouldn't be allowed to call myself a teacher if I didn't teach my students anything, right? Chuckled Izuku, who stretched his arms and legs to loosen up his muscles. It wasn't often that he got to spar due to his busy schedule. So how do you want to do this? I want you to go all out. Izuku paused while in the middle of stretching his left leg. Excuse me? I want you to go all out, and in return, I will do the same, said Genos, who took a battle stance while his mechanical body warmed itself up in preparation for the spar against the strongest hero in the world. Please, sensei. No. The quick and straightforward answer surprised Genos. Please, sensei. If I am to learn, I must test myself against you at your strongest. Now finished with his stretches, Izuku pushed himself up and stared at his student from across the quarry. Genos, I will be completely honest with you. If I were to fight you while using my full power, you would die. Carnage Kabuto didn't last more than a second when I used 100% of my power, and I believe that doing so was severe overkill. Not only did he defeat you, but he did so easily, and I doubt your recent upgrades would have made much of a difference. Genos widened his eyes and was quick to note that his sensei didn't say that out of arrogance, but confidence. As much as Izuku's blunt words hurt, Genos looked down at his clenched right fist, knowing that his sensei was right. Sensei is correct. Where's he defeated Kabuto with ease? I couldn't so much as leave a scratch on that monster. Izuku knew that he might sound a little harsh, but he needed to curb Genos' recklessness before it got him killed. I want you to go all out and show me what you can do. In return, I will judge you on your fighting skills and point out how you can improve them. While disappointed that he wouldn't be facing his sensei at full power, Genos nodded in understanding and retook his fighting stance while powering up his mechanical body. From underneath Genos' sleeveless white shirt, Izuku could see the ports on the cyborg's chest glow bright orange, due to the extreme heat building up within Genos' body. The same glow could also be seen from the gaps in Genos' recently upgraded mechanical arms, the anti-Deku tactical arms. Without giving Izuku a warning, the boosters on Genos' shoulders erupted in a detonation of heat and flame that propelled the cyborg forward whilst he thrust his right leg out to kick the #1 hero. A small spark of emerald lightning bounced off Deku's muscular body as he called upon his full cowl technique. Seeing Genos' flying dropkick a mile away, Deku leaned back at a perfect 90-degree angle to dodge the cyborg who flew overhead. Realizing that he missed, Genos used the incineration cannon on his right palm to slow down his momentum before he used both palms to force himself into a rapid spin and threw a spin kick at the back of Deku's head. With his back turned to Genos, most would have expected the kick to land. But because of one of Izuku's many quirks, he sensed the incoming kick and ducked at the last second to avoid it. The quirk that Izuku just used was a particularly useful one called Danger Sense, which he inherited from the fourth user of One for All, Hikage Shinomori. The quirk allowed him to detect any potential threats in the surrounding area, thus giving him ample opportunity to properly react to any attacks, even those that he couldn't see. Danger Sense could also sense one's intent and negative emotions. When amplified with One for All, Danger Sense allowed Izuku to detect threats for miles, although the sharp stabbing pain in the head that he got whenever detecting multiple or greater threats was annoying at times. Undeterred, Genos used his boosters to fly around his sensei in a random pattern to try and confuse him before he thrust himself high up into the air with his right leg raised over his head for an axe kick. The cyborg then activated his boosters again to launch himself back down at Deku to increase the power of his axe kick, which he managed to land on his sensei. The force of Genos' axe kick caused the ground to explode with rocks and dust being thrown into the air. The cloud of dust was dispersed by a small shockwave that occurred in the center of it. With the dust gone, Genos could see that his shaking leg was pressed down on Deku's left arm, which he used to block the axe kick, leaving the #1 hero unharmed. However, Genos noticed that while his attack did no damage, it did manage to drive Deku's feet into the earth. With Deku now stuck, Genos saw an opportunity. Kicking off Deku's arm, Genos backflipped to a safe distance before he aimed his right arm at his opponent. Multiple ports opened up from Genos' fist and arm, revealing multiple cannons which glowed with energy. Each one of the cannons fired its loads, and the gathered energy combined to shoot a powerful energy beam. Despite his feet being stuck in the ground, Izuku blurred away as the beam shot through where he was just standing. Instead of hitting him, the energy beam hit the cliff instead, resulting in an explosion of intense heat and flying molten rock. Appearing a few feet away from where he dodged the energy beam, Izuku looked over his shoulder to survey the smoking crater on the cliff. He couldn't help but whistle in appreciation of the destruction. That's some impressive firepower. Your beams were powerful before, but they acted more like concentrated flamethrowers. Now, they fire like an actual laser, he complimented, hoping to someday meet the scientist who did Genos' upgrades. Dr. Casino, from what Genos told him. Genos released the breath he was holding in. Damn, I need more speed, thought the cyborg, slamming his palms on the molten floor. The power within Genos' body drastically increased as heat gathered in his boosters while electricity bounced off his mechanical arms. The rise in power wasn't missed by Izuku, who focused his attention on Genos, who was starting to levitate. Then all of a sudden, the ground shattered as Genos disappeared in a burst of speed that he couldn't have performed before getting his anti-Deku tactical arms upgrade. Deku disappeared as well, easily matching Genos' improved speeds. The pair of them moved across the quarry at speeds that made them invisible to the human eye. The only reason anyone would notice their presence was because of the craters that were popping up across the quarry, as well as the occasional shockwaves that occurred whenever Izuku and Genos clashed. Clenching his teeth in annoyance, Genos chased after his fleeing sensei and threw a barrage of punches at him, with each punch dodged effortlessly by Izuku. Every punch that Genos missed made a new crater in either the floor or on the face of a cliff. Spotting his sensei stopping in midair by the cliff, Genos took his chance and continued his barrage of punches. The resulting blows destroyed the face of the cliff and left behind a large crater. While in midair and facing the large crater he just made on the cliff, Genos pulled back his fist for another punch, but stopped once he saw that Deku was missing. He's gone? How can Sensei move so fast? Thought Genos, who then used his hypersensors to scan his surrounding environment for Deku. Sensei is above me. Too slow, Genos. Before the cyborg could react, a black whip wrapped itself around Genos from above, trapping his arms to his torso. Looking up, Genos saw his floating sensei smiling down at him with the black whip protruding from his left palm. Just as Genos was about to use his boosters to try and escape, Izuku pulled the black whip over his head while taking Genos along for the ride and then flicked it downwards, throwing Genos straight down to the floor. The floor cracked and burst once Genos collided with it. Izuku landed on the cracked ground and looked into the cloud of dust where he threw Genos. "You ready to call it quits?" he asked, but by the orange glow he could see from inside the cloud of dust, he guessed that the answer was a resounding no. With both of his fists now connected, Genos's forearms and fists opened up to reveal over a dozen cannons, each glowing orange as they all gathered energy from his core. "Incinerate!" exclaimed Genos before firing a much more powerful beam that vaporized everything in front of him. While impressed with the powerful beam of destruction, Deku decided to take it head-on instead of dodging it. Izuku aimed his left hand at the incoming beam with his middle finger pulled back for a flick and brimming with the power of one for all. With a smile, Izuku flicked his finger and the power placed in the flick unleashed a thin but powerful beam of pressurized air that flew at Genos's beam. One for all. Flick bolt. Due to his beam being so large and wide, Genos couldn't see Deku flick his finger, because if he did, he might have remembered him using the same move against Carnage Kabuto after the monster blew away Genos's beam of fire. Deku's concentrated beam of pressurized air collided with Genos's more widespread beam of destruction, but instead of fighting in a clash for power, the pressurized air pierced through Genos's beam without struggle, dispersing it in all directions in the process. Once Genos's beam had been completely dispersed, the pressurized air then flew over the cyborg's right shoulder, far enough away to not cause any damage to his mechanical body, but close enough to rip the upper right side of Genos's shirt. With wide eyes, Genos attempted to comprehend how his most powerful attack was just countered, but then saw Deku standing right in front of him, having moved so fast that it seemed like he just teleported. The cyborg attempted to attack, but when Izuku pulled his clenched fist back for an obvious punch, Genos was hit with a strange and terrifying foreboding feeling that paralyzed him. It was a feeling that reminded Genos of when someone fell from thousands of feet in the air. It didn't matter how hard that person screamed or struggled. The end result was still going to be the same. It was only when Deku threw the punch, which seemed to have grown immensely in size, did the cyborg realize what the foreboding feeling was. Death. Genos was aware that he needed to move out of the way or possibly counter the incoming attack, but deep down, he knew that nothing could save him. Even at full power, he wouldn't be fast enough to dodge the attack, and he was too weak to possibly counter it, and any attempt to block it would only lead to a quick and hopefully painless death. Maybe that was why Genos didn't resist, because deep down, he knew that there was no fighting against death. Luckily for Genos, Deku stopped his fist just as it was an inch away from caving into the cyborg's skull. At that moment, nothing happened as Genos simply stared at the white-gloved fist in the face. Then, time returned to normal as the force of Deku's punch summoned up a powerful gust of wind that blew straight into Genos's face, making the cyborg struggle to keep his footing as dust and rubble were blown around the quarry. Once the powerful gust of wind died down, Genos was still on his feet with a bewildered expression on his face, uncaring about how his hair was blown upwards by the force of his sensei's punch, making it look spikier than normal. "Not bad, Genos. Not bad at all," Izuku praised, pulling back his arm, which unconsciously made the cyborg relax now that the destructive appendage wasn't anywhere near his face. "I offer my compliments to Dr. Casino. The upgrades he made on your body are nothing short of amazing. You're stronger and faster, your reaction time has improved, and your incinerator cannons have greatly risen in power and efficiency. What I will also say is that you continue to be reckless, especially when things don't go your way." "Sensei?" Genos asked, still a little out of it as he processed his near-death experience. "You're quick to attack first, and while it's good to be quick on the draw, Sometimes you need to step back and analyze your opponents for weaknesses. You rushed in during our encounter with Carnage Kabuto, and if not for the fact that he didn't take you seriously, he would have killed you in an instant, told Izuku. Knowing that Carnage Kabuto had only been playing with Genos during their encounter with him in the House of Evolution. Not every monster will be as careless as him. If you fought a monster as strong as Carnage Kabuto, and they took you seriously, it would spell the end for you. Having mostly returned to his senses, Genos nodded in understanding. He needed to be more careful when fighting certain mysterious beings, otherwise, he could find himself turned into a pile of scrap before he could avenge his family. I've also noticed that you're quick to get frustrated when your attacks don't connect. Try to remain calm when fighting, because getting angry in the middle of a fight might just be what kills you in the end. Another thing I want to point out is your weaponry. Genos looked at his sensei in surprise. He wasn't expecting his weapons to be called out. My weaponry? Yes. I noticed that all your weaponry focuses on the absolute destruction of your enemy, said Izuku, tapping his chin with his finger. Genos nodded in confirmation. Of course. With more destructive power, I can deal greater damage to my enemies. I can understand that, but what if you were caught in a situation where your destructive weaponry was made useless? Asked Deku, curious over how Genos would handle such a situation. Genos peered at Izuku as if he asked him something crazy. How could my weapons be made useless? Asked the cyborg, failing to understand the possibility. Let's put you in a scenario. You're fighting a mysterious being, but before you can land the killing blow, they take an innocent civilian hostage. How would you save that civilian? Asked Izuku, folding his muscular arms across his equally muscular chest. Genos opened his mouth to answer, but no words came out. Genos may be intelligent, but he honestly had no idea how to save the civilian, since he obviously couldn't use his incinerator cannons with the mysterious being holding a hostage. I do not know, sensei. Forgive me, apologized Genos, looking down in defeat. Izuku merely laughed and patted Genos on the shoulder, not noticing that his gentle pats were slightly denting the cyborg's shoulder. There is nothing to forgive. You wanted to become my student to learn, so learn you shall. Having the firepower to eliminate mysterious beings is great and all, but there's more to being a hero than simply fighting monsters. Most tend to forget that. You must be ready to save lives at a moment's notice, no matter if it's from a mysterious being or rescuing civilians from a collapsed building caused by a natural disaster. Genos regarded Deku in complete admiration. I never realized hero work was more than fighting monsters. Sensei is amazing. A groaning noise interrupted the thoughts of the two heroes who both looked down at Deku's stomach, which was groaning in protest. Izuku blushed in embarrassment and laughed. It seems like the spar made me hungry. Let's go and get something to eat, my treat. As Izuku turned and walked towards the city closest to the quarry, Genos felt a draft from behind him, so he turned around, and what he saw made him widen his eyes in awe and incredulity. The cliff behind him was now a massive trench that reached all the way to the other side of the landmass. The cyborg hadn't failed to notice how the overhead clouds looked like they'd been split in half either. Genos thought he had some grasp on understanding Deku's total strength, but seeing as how the wind that Deku's punch conjured up was enough to cut a massive trench through a cliff and cut the sky, he figured that he had to reassess his learnings on Sensei's strength. In comparison, his incinerator cannons only left a crater in the cliff when he fired upon it. I am fully prepared to do anything in order to become stronger, but I cannot picture myself ever approaching Sensei's power. Not even close, thought Genos while staring at the massive trench in what was once a cliff. The cyborg turned to stare at the back of Izuku Midoriya, who was walking away. He's on a different level. It's no wonder he's considered the world's strongest hero. Once they returned to civilization, Izuku and Genos stopped at an average-looking udon noodle restaurant. Since neither of the heroes was picky, they settled on eating here, and so Izuku walked to the entrance and slid the door open. Walking in, Izuku looked around and found the restaurant to be small, but comfy in appearance. With it being so late, it was mostly empty, with only two high school girls sitting at a table and a middle-aged couple sitting by the counter where the chef was working. "Excuse us, table for two?" he asked while Genos closed the door behind them. "Welcome. Come on in and take a seat, spoke the chef, who looked up from what he was doing to greet his next customers, only to stop and stare with wide eyes upon recognizing the large man to be none other than the S-Class Rank 1 hero, Deku. "Why, you're Deku," gasped the chef. pointing a very shaky finger at the one nicknamed Mr. Invincible, the world's strongest hero, in his restaurant. Of course, the chef's gasp captured the attention of everyone else in the restaurant, who all turned to see Deku standing before them. The high school girls shrieked in obvious excitement, alongside the wife of the middle-aged couple. "Oh my God, it's Deku. I can't believe it's him. Oh my." While the husband wasn't happy that his wife of 30 years was ogling somebody else, he'd give her a pass since it was Deku. Izuku chuckled over the fuss about him and waved at the citizens before turning his gaze to the chef. "So we can take a seat anywhere?" The gaping chef mindlessly nodded before regaining control of himself. "Oh, of course. Take a seat anywhere you want," told the chef, waving an arm towards the seats in his small restaurant. Nodding with a smile, Deku took a seat at a table that was 2 tables down from where the high school girls were sitting. After sitting down, the pair of S-class heroes looked over the menu while ignoring the stares from the other occupants of the restaurant. "What is it you are having, sensei?" asked Genos while looking over the menu. Izuku hummed as he studied the menu for something appetizing, but a sign hanging over the counter caught his attention. "Super Spicy Mega Monster Udon Challenge?" he said, reading the sign. By the looks of it, it was an eating challenge made up by the chef, and beside the sign were pictures of people who managed to complete the challenge. "I'll be having the Super Spicy Mega Monster Udon," he answered, folding up his menu. "Very well. I will have the same as you," Sensei told Genos, folding his menu. Once they put down their menus, the chef was quick to come to their side. "Are you ready to order?" he asked, attempting to not look nervous while in front of the number 1 hero. He failed. "We would like 2 Super Spicy Mega Monster Udons and 2 colas, please," said Izuku while giving the shocked chef their menus. It turned out that making the challenge took nearly half an hour, and Izuku couldn't help but laugh when he saw the chef serve them their noodles in actual blue buckets. The challenge wasn't just difficult because of the overall spiciness of the noodles, but also because they were given enough to feed a whole family of 6. After thanking the chef, Izuku took a whiff of the udon noodles and felt his mouth water over the smell. "Bottoms up!" he exclaimed, and to the shock and amazement of everyone watching, Izuku lifted the bucket and began downing the noodles in one go. Genos watched for a moment before he shrugged his shoulders and copied his sensei by gulping down the spicy noodles without any trouble. A few seconds later, Izuku placed the now empty bucket onto the table and sighed in satisfaction, steam pouring out of his mouth as he did so. With a body mass as big as his, he required a lot of food to satisfy his stomach and to keep his body in the best shape. The Super Spicy Mega Monster Udon was perfect to satisfy his stomach. "That was delicious," he complimented, making the chef blush over the praise. "Did you see that? He ate all those noodles in one go," whispered one of the high school students in awe. "That's the number 1 hero for ya," answered the other girl, although she sounded just as shocked as the other. Genos placed his own bucket down after finishing his noodles and simply sighed in satisfaction. If they thought that was impressive, they've never seen Pig God eat, Izuku thought, remembering how during his first introduction with his fellow S-class hero, he had seen Pig God eat whole roasted chickens from a paper bag as if they were small pieces of candy. As Izuku downed his cola, the chef returned with a camera on hand. "Mr. Deku, I hope you don't mind if I take a picture of you. I usually take a picture of anyone who completes the Super Spicy Mega Monster Udon Challenge and put it up on the wall. Of course, it's up to you." "I don't mind one bit," answered Izuku, who sat back and posed with a smile as the chef took his picture. The chef also took a picture of Genos since he also completed the challenge. "Thank you, and if I'm not pushing it, could I please have an autograph?" "It's for my son," asked the chef, hoping that he wasn't pushing his luck. As a hero who always made time for his fans, Izuku agreed and took out a pen from one of his belt's pockets. "No problem. What is it you want me to sign?" Quickly checking himself for anything, the chef offered Izuku his notepad that he uses to write down customer orders. Taking the notepad, Izuku signed his name on it with practice ease before offering it back to the chef, who looked at the autograph as if it was signed by God himself. It wasn't the first time someone looked at his autograph like that, and it definitely won't be the last. "I bet I made the same face when I first got All Might's autograph," he thought with a silent chuckle, remembering how excited he was when he got the autograph of the number 1 hero, All Might. Izuku was shaken out of his thoughts when the two high school girls and the middle-aged wife came up to him with excited smiles. Deku, you are just the best. Could I please get an autograph as well? Asked one of the high school girls who appeared to be doing everything in her power not to collapse in embarrassment. That's no problem at all. What would you like me to sign? After giving 3 more autographs and taking a few selfies, everyone returned to their tables. Izuku downed the rest of his cola and sighed in satisfaction. The door opening had him turn to it on reflex, and his eyes widened slightly when he recognized the man who just walked in. Welcome. Sit any dash, said the chef who gasped, recognizing another famous face walking into his restaurant. Said person ignored the stares and gasps from the civilians and walked over to the table Izuku and Genos were sitting at. He stopped by the table and smiled down at the pair with his hands still in his pockets. You must be Genos. I'm Sweet Mask. Class A rank 1 inch introduced the now revealed hero, Sweet Mask. Sweet Mask is a tall, lean-built handsome young man with messy, shoulder-length light blue hair and yellow eyes. He's wearing a white jacket over a gray shirt with a green circle necklace and a pair of black trousers. Izuku wasn't too surprised to see Sweet Mask, having suspected that he would personally welcome Genos and speak with him about taking his job as a hero seriously. After all, Genos wouldn't have been allowed to rise to S-Class so quickly unless Sweet Mask allowed it. Many heroes have attempted to rise to S-Class, but to do so, they must first earn the A-Class Rank 1 title to apply for S-Class status. For the past 2 years, none have managed to take the rank from the monster that was Sweet Mask. Sweet Mask was doing such a good job of preventing heroes from joining Class S that he had been given the unofficial title of Gatekeeper. Izuku was on good terms with Sweet Mask, having worked with the man on a few occasions, either by fighting mysterious beings together or whenever they collaborated to advertise hero memorabilia. While he didn't have an accurate measurement of Sweet Mask's total strength, Izuku believed without a shadow of a doubt that Sweet Mask was more than strong enough to join Class S. Yet, he remained as the top-ranked Class A hero so he could keep the so-called weaklings out of Class S. Personally, Izuku wouldn't use such a term when regarding anyone, let alone fellow heroes, particularly because of him being called that throughout his entire childhood, but he did agree with Sweet Mask at some level. S-Class heroes were expected to defeat demon-level threats on their own. If an unprepared hero joined S-Class and fought a demon-level threat on their own, the result would be a bloodbath. Sweet Mask, I was expecting you to give Genos a visit, sooner or later, said Izuku, smiling at the famous hero. While Izuku may be officially the top-ranked hero in the world without question, he was constantly challenging Sweet Mask for the number 1 spot for most popular hero. Sweet Mask wasn't just a high-ranking hero, but also a model, actor, and singer, and he even worked as a member of the Hero Association hero rank evaluation staff. All in all, Izuku got some swift competition, but he doesn't know how Sweet Mask does it. Being the most popular celebrity in the world must have its own difficulties. Sweet Mask turned to Izuku and his smile seemed to widen just by looking at him. Deku, it's always a pleasure to meet the world's beautiful symbol of justice, complimented the A-Class hero in complete honesty. As the gatekeeper, he stopped many unworthy heroes from reaching S-Class status. There are even some current S-Class heroes who Sweet Mask believed don't deserve their ranks, such as Pori Pori Prisoner and Metal Bat. However, there was one true hero who he saw as the perfect representation of what a hero should aspire to be, and that was none other than the number 1 hero himself, Deku. What is it you want? Asked Genos, being as blunt as usual when it came to speaking with people. If Sweet Mask was offended, he didn't show it and instead turned back to Genos with an easygoing smile. Could we speak for a moment? Seeing no reason why they couldn't, Genos looked to Izuku. I shall return, sensei. I'll be here, answered Deku, waving the cyborg off who followed Sweet Mask outside. Within 5 minutes, Genos returned and sat back down with a thoughtful expression. Hope he didn't come off too strong. Sweet Mask takes hero work more seriously than others, even more than myself, said Izuku, having an idea of what Sweet Mask wanted to speak with Genos about. It is fine, sensei. He was simply welcoming me to the Hero Association, answered Genos. Izuku nodded before reaching for his wallet. Okay then, we should head off. It's late and I'd like to get some sleep, he said before placing the payment for the noodles, as well as a generous tip for the chef. Thanks for the food. Oh, of course. Please come again. City Z. A week passed by in blissful silence, much to Izuku's relief. With no dragon-level monsters causing havoc in any of the cities, Izuku was given more time to focus his energy on his duties as principal of the Hero Academy, specifically, completing his paperwork. At the moment, Izuku was walking through City Z so he could do some shopping, as his apartment was in dire need of food. Being 7 feet 4 inches tall and packed with muscle, he needed to eat 4 times the normally recommended amount of food every day to keep his muscle mass and fill him with energy. Hence, shopping for food tended to be expensive, but being the S-Class Rank 1 hero had certain benefits, like a weekly pay so big that it was practically criminal. Walking through the busy streets of City Z, Izuku tugged the hood of his green hoodie down to hide more of his hair and face. So far, it looked like he wouldn't have to worry about anyone recognizing him. At least, that was until he heard a woman's voice from behind him, which was followed by someone grabbing him roughly by his left shoulder. That's the guy. He looks very suspicious and dangerous, said a young woman, pointing at the disguised Izuku Midoriya in distrust. She had noticed the large and dangerous-looking man purposely trying to keep his face hidden, which she found very suspicious. Thinking that he was some kind of criminal, she alerted a nearby hero to deal with him. Hey, buddy, what do you think you're doing? Turning around, Izuku saw that the person who grabbed his shoulder was a large, muscular man with tiger stripes running through his hair and eyebrows. He also wore a tiger-striped tank top, which signified him as the C-Class hero, Tank Top Tiger, a member of the Tank Topper Army, one of the largest and strongest factions in the Hero Association, which is led by the S-Class Rank 14 hero, Tank Top Master. Izuku held a lot of respect for his fellow S-Class hero, Tank Top Master, who was known for his chivalrous and humble personality, which was sadly uncommon among the current heroes. To make sure that the next generation of heroes became more humble than the current generation, Izuku specifically had the students in Hero Academy learn how to not be a victim of their own arrogance. The last thing the world needed was more arrogant heroes with explosive personalities, like his former friend, Katsuki Bakugo. As much as Izuku respected Tank Top Master, he can't help but be baffled over how he believed people gained power from wearing tank tops of all things. Still, Tank Top Master was S-Class for a reason and was more than deserving of his rank, not just for his strength, but for also commanding the Tank Topper Army. Although Izuku heard rumors that some heroes of the Tank Topper Army were prone to being arrogant and rude. Pretty 5 end. Are you deaf? I said. What do you think you're doing? Looking all suspicious, demanded Tank Top Tiger, glaring at the hooded man. Izuku stared at the hero and blinked, realizing that Tank Top Tiger didn't recognize him. As much as he didn't like to sound arrogant, none of the C-Class heroes would dare talk down to him if they knew who he was. I think this is a simple misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Huh? Don't think you can weasel your way out of this, remarked Tank Top Tiger in an aggressive manner. The confrontation wasn't missed by the nearby civilians who watched in awe, recognizing the C-Class Rank 6 hero, Tank Top Tiger. Look, isn't that Tank Top Tiger? I can't believe it. It is Tank Top Tiger. No way. Awesome. He's the real deal. Tank Top Tiger soaked up the attention and praise from the public. Even Class C heroes get recognized. Well, if they're in the top 10 anyway, said the hero before he got into Izuku's face. Well, how about it? You want to fight and make me look good in the process? Asked the C-Class hero in a smug tone. Exploding shuriken. Izuku felt a pulse of pain in the back of his skull, warning him that his danger sense quirk was detecting a nearby threat. Moving quickly, Izuku grabbed Tank Top Tiger by his shoulders, and as easily as lifting a feather, he lifted the muscular hero off the ground and moved him to the right so Izuku could use his own body to protect his fellow hero. The trio of thrown shuriken, which was meant for the C-Class hero, instead swerved toward himself and detonated upon hitting Izuku's muscular back, engulfing the upper half of his body in smoke. What the dash? Muttered Tank Top Tiger in surprise, due to being caught off guard by the surprise attack and the fact that the stranger just took the attack for him. The Class C hero may not be smart like Tank Top Doctor, but he wasn't blind. You took that hit for me? He stated in disbelief, wondering why the hooded man would do that for him. From inside the small cloud of smoke, a deep chuckle erupted and many felt a tingle of excitement when they recognized it from the many online videos that showcased a certain hero. Of course. After all, it is my duty as a hero. From the smoke, a muscular man with curly green hair and glowing emerald eyes emerged with a wide smile on his face, unharmed by the explosive shurikens. yet now shirtless because his hoodie and shirt were destroyed by the explosions. Not that anyone was complaining. Everyone recognized who the man was, and while his appearance brought hope and excitement to the nearby civilians, Tank Top Tiger instead felt his blood turn ice cold once he figured out that he was talking smack to the #1 hero of all people. "Do not fear, for Deku is here," bellowed the shirtless hero while flexing his powerful muscles to the crowd, much to their pleasure. Izuku turned around to find the source of the explosive shurikens was none other than the villain, Speedo Sound Sonic, who was wearing a black shirt and pants and had a sheathed sword tied to his waist. "You again," said Izuku in more relief than surprise. "Thank God, I didn't kill him. I've finally found you, Deku. Today is the day we settle our score," said Sonic, whose hand slowly reached for the hilt of his sword. The ninja had suffered a humiliating defeat at the hands of the hero during the Paradisers incident, and he for one can't accept that. He needed to make things even, and he could only do that by defeating and killing the man that was nicknamed the Invincible Man. Deku took in his surroundings, not liking the idea of fighting Sonic in the middle of the street with so many people in the area. "Tank Top Tiger, I need you to evacuate everyone from the surrounding area, now." Gulping, the C-Class Rank 6 hero nodded, knowing that he was likely on thin ice with the S-Class Rank 1 hero, so the last thing he wanted was to annoy him further. "All right," Tank Top Tiger turned to the watching civilians. "You heard the man. Get your butts moving and get out of here." That was all the civilians needed to hear before they began to run away, with Tank Top Tiger moving to follow after them. However, the C-Class hero widened his eyes when the villain suddenly appeared before him with the sword already in mid-swing, aiming to remove his head from his shoulders. "I can't dodge," thought Tank Top Tiger, who widened his eyes in horror, knowing that he was about to get killed and he couldn't do anything to save himself. Luckily for him, Sonic's sword shattered into 100 pieces after being punched by Deku, who materialized before him in an instant, forcing Sonic to disappear again and reappear a few feet away. A sweaty and shaking Tank Top Tiger collapsed onto his hands and knees while looking down at the ground. "If it wasn't for Deku, I would be dead right now," he thought in terrifying realization. Taking down thieves and fighting tiger-level monsters with his Tank Top brethren was a lot different than facing someone who could move so incredibly fast. "Don't let this put you down, Tank Top Tiger." Blinking, Tank Top Tiger gazed up from the floor to see Deku smiling at him from over his shoulder. What? Every hero has felt the sting of defeat at some point in their lives, including myself. That's why we must learn from our defeats to improve ourselves so we can become better heroes. Learn from this defeat, Tank Top Tiger, and strive to become a better hero, advised Deku before turning back to Sonic. Deku's advice and actions struck a chord with Tank Top Tiger, who stared down at the floor in shame. Deku saved his life not once, but twice, even after he talked down to the disguised #1 hero. His stupid pride made him look like a fool in front of Deku, and he only had himself to blame. "I shame the tank top I'm wearing," thought Tank Top Tiger, who pushed himself up to his feet and ran away, knowing he would only get in Deku's way if he stayed. Speedo Sound Sonic looked at the hilt of his destroyed sword in surprise. "My sword should have taken his hand off, so why did it shatter?" thought Sonic while he sheathed his destroyed blade and glared at the hero. "Is his fist that much stronger than steel?" As someone who had been punched across the sky with that same fist, Sonic was willing to believe that. "Stand down, Sonic. Don't make this harder than it should be," ordered Deku, having noticed that there were still a few stragglers in the area. If a fight broke out, they could get caught in the crossfire. Sonic wasn't someone who was easily unnerved, but he couldn't stop the bead of sweat from dripping down his forehead as he bore witness to the overpowering aura that was pouring out of Deku. The immense aura was giving off the illusion that Deku was larger than he actually was, making Sonic bite his lip as the hero got larger and larger right before his eyes. Despite the powerful aura, illusion, and invisible pressure that threatened to bring him down to his knees, Sonic pushed aside everything to prepare himself for the fight. Only then did Sonic spot Deku's eyes shift to the nearby civilians. An idea suddenly sprung to mind. Sonic disappeared and reappeared high in the air, seemingly gliding with the wind before he threw a handful of exploding shuriken down at Deku. Hail of carnage! Deku tensed up, preparing to deal with the incoming shuriken, only to be shocked when they all suddenly ventured off in different directions, hitting the nearby buildings and causing rubble to fall on the street where some civilians remained. A specifically large piece of rubble nearly squashed a young woman who tripped while fleeing, but Deku used a black whip to knock it away. Deku then glared up at the villain, who was still throwing exploding shuriken. "Face me, Deku. Can you defeat me and save them from their deaths?" exclaimed Sonic while throwing more exploding shurikens, a sinister smirk on his face. Deku was about to jump up to put down the villain, but an explosion from one of the shurikens managed to toss a car in the air, and the hero noticed the flying car was heading for a crying child who was walking in the middle of the street. Deku activated Full Cowl and was about to move to save the kid, but it turned out he wasn't needed. "I've got you, kid!" exclaimed Tank Top Tiger, having grabbed the child and jumped away from the flying car before it could hit them. Rolling forward while keeping his arms around the child to protect him, Tank Top Tiger rolled to his feet with the child still in his arms. "Come on, let's get out of here," said the C-Class hero who ran in the opposite direction of the explosions. Deku was delightfully surprised, having expected Tank Top Tiger to flee for safety along with the other civilians. Instead, he stuck around to help evacuate those who couldn't, and he even risked his own life to save a kid from the flying car. Those actions spoke of a different Tank Top Tiger from just a few minutes ago. There's hope for him after all, thought Deku, who then focused his attention back on Sonic, who ran out of explosive shurikens. "What? Not coming? Then I'll come to you," shouted Sonic, moving to attack Deku since it looked like the #1 hero wasn't coming to him. Again, the invisible force re-emerged, but this time, the pressure was 100 times more powerful than before. This caused the villain to falter while still in midair as he tried to figure out how to breathe again. "What is this gut-wrenching feeling?" thought a heavily sweating Sonic who struggled to catch his breath. A glowing green light could be seen at the edge of his vision, which made Sonic look over his shoulder to find the source. What he saw made his eyes widen in terror. Hovering above the gliding villain was none other than the hero, Deku, who manifested above him without the ninja even realizing it. While making a note of that shocking show of speed, Sonic was more concerned about how Deku was covered in a shroud of energy that looked like a mix of emerald flames and lightning. The hero's now spiky hair was also blocking the sun from reaching the upper half of Deku's face, covering it in a shadow. Not that it hid the two glowing green eyes that were glaring into Sonic's soul. However, such overwhelming speed and power weren't what filled the villain with so much dread. No, it was the lack of a smile on Deku's face that managed to frighten Sonic more than anything else, and he wasn't even sure why. Not that he had any more time to think about it, because Deku threw a punch right at Sonic's left cheek. When Deku's fist made contact with Sonic's cheek, a shockwave of massive proportion transpired, shattering the windows of every building in a 5-mile radius. The shockwave also caused the entirety of City Z to shake as if it was hit by an earthquake, and the sky, which was once relatively filled with white fluffy clouds, was now clear, having been dispersed. The moment Sonic's cheek touched Deku's fist, the villain fell into unconsciousness well before he was rocketed down onto the pavement. Deku lowered himself to the edge of the crater that he just made using Sonic's body. Once he saw the unconscious villain stuck in the crater, Deku canceled out Full Cowl, giving the surrounding area a quick look over to check out the damage. Izuku winced when he saw the shattered windows of every building in the nearby area, knowing that he did most of that. "I'm gonna have to pay for that." Hero Association HQ, Control Room. In the control room, 3 Hero Association employees sat at a console, including Bearded Worker, who was sitting on the main console which overlooked the floor below it where the 2 console operators were stationed. Right now, they were discussing the arrest made by Deku. The man apprehended by Deku the other day in City Z is suspected of being involved in several heinous crimes, including assassination, told the male operator while looking over the holographic screen in front of him. Bearded Worker, who had his holographic screen open, looked over the data and image of the villain, Speedo Sound Sonic, who was now the newest resident of the Smelly Lid Prison, home of the S-Class rank 16 hero, Pori Pori Prisoner. City Z again, huh? Sighed Bearded Worker, who looked down at a piece of paper that was made up of graphs that show monsters have been emerging in City Z a lot more often. "What's the status of the investigation I requested?" "You mean the one for the ghost town?" asked the female console operator, who was already in the middle of bringing up the information onto her holographic screen. "Yes," answered Bearded Worker. "Let me see," muttered the female operator before another holographic screen appeared, showcasing the required information about the requested investigation. "It appears that an official inquiry has been submitted," she answered while reading off the screen, which revealed that the 2 A-Class heroes, Golden Ball and Spring Mustachio, were assigned to investigate City Z. "Well, doesn't that sound ever so interesting?" "Want me to check it out?" asked a smiling Tatsumaki while leaning over Bearded Worker's console, levitating herself in the air by using her telekinetic powers. "Tornado? How did you get in here?" asked a surprised Bearded Worker who nearly jumped out of his chair in surprise. He hadn't even seen her enter the room. Tatsumaki pushed off the console so she could stand upright in the air. "Why? Aren't I allowed here?" she asked, losing her smile and sounding annoyed. Of course. For City Z, the investigation is just a formality. It's not worth your time, explained Bearded Worker. Turned out, that was the wrong thing to say to the S-Class Rank 2 hero, who misinterpreted the man's words. What? You think I'm not good enough? The Esper's temper rose, which resulted in her psychokinetic powers shaking the room and levitating some small items, such as Bearded Worker's coffee cup. Luckily for Bearded Worker, the female console operator walked up to the upper level with a smile, seemingly unafraid of Tatsumaki's rising power and temper. That's not it. The association decided this was not a Class S matter. That's all, she explained, walking over to Bearded Worker's side. Yes, exactly right, confirmed Bearded Worker, thankful for the help. Tatsumaki glared at the two for a moment before she turned her nose away while also stopping her rising power. You better tell me if you find anything that looks like it can fight, warned Tatsumaki, pointing a finger at Bearded Worker before she flew to the door. She then turned to glare at the two employees again. It would be much faster if I just went myself. You guys are idiots, she insulted before the automatic door slid shut, much to Bearded Worker's relief. She's lively, isn't she? Giggled the console operator. She's just bored. There's not exactly a lot of monsters out there that can last more than a second against her, stated Bearded Worker, knowing that Tatsumaki usually wouldn't dare offer to lead something as simple as an investigation. But since there were no dragon-level threats that required her attention, she had nothing else to do. I wish Deku was here to keep her in line. We couldn't exactly ask the #1 hero to babysit Tatsumaki, giggled the female operator. If only, sighed Bearded Worker in disappointment. A man could dream. Hero Association, meeting room. At the same time, a meeting occurred among 10 high-ranking executives of the Hero Association. The meeting room's only source of light was the large holographic table that all of the executives were sitting around. Leading the meeting was the executive, Sekingar, who was standing at the end of the holographic table, so he could easily go over the meeting's main agenda, which was about the reports submitted by the heroes who supervise an assigned city. Some of the executives taking part in the meeting include Executive Girl, the Spectacled Worker, and the Minister Officer of Justice, Sitch. Reports have come in from each location being investigated, told Sekingar, who placed his phone on the holographic table, which automatically synchronized together. The contents of the phone were uploaded onto the holographic table, so everyone could see the reports submitted by the heroes. Once all reports were successfully uploaded to the holographic table, a hologram of a young-looking man wearing a full-body dog suit appeared floating above the table. First is Watchdog Man, Class S hero, investigating City Q. Nothing unusual. Nothing unusual, repeated an executive in disbelief. Yes, sir, confirmed Sekingar. That's hard to believe. We all know City Q is a hot zone with more casualties and monsters than any other area under our jurisdiction. Well, sir, knowing him, I'm confident that he believes that, whatever may occur, he'll be able to take care of it on his own without assistance. Though he has focused his effort on City Q, his track record at monster elimination is top-notch. There's no need to worry, answered Sekingar. Class S heroes don't pay much attention to details. They're not ones known to write reports, stated another executive before everyone's attention was brought to the next hero's report. Next, City W, Heavy Kong, Class A hero, reports, nothing unusual, told Sekingar as a hologram of the hero, Heavy Kong appeared beside his submitted report. In City H, Mushroom, Class B and Horsebone, Class C report, nothing unusual. The holographic images of the two heroes pop up beside their reports. In City D, Class A hero, Lightning Genji reports, moderate restoration after the damage caused by the gigantic creature aside. Nothing unusual. Holographic images of the giant monster, Marigori, come to light over the holographic table, as well as images of the destruction he caused during his brief time as a monster. Cities B and D both sustained damage that day. Would have been a lot worse, if not for the timely interception of Deku, chimed Executive Girl while she viewed the images. In order to prevent more disasters from occurring, we must be diligent and uncover any covert activity that can threaten our society, stated Sekingar. Well, keep in mind that this investigation was requested for that expressed purpose, but detecting these monsters is more difficult than expected, remarked a serious-looking Sitch. Sekingar continued to the final report. City F, Class A hero, Snakebite Snack reports, nothing unusual ever since the massacre of the Paradiser terrorist group and the arrest of their leader, Hammerhead. Did we ever find out who killed the Paradisers? Asked Executive Girl, having heard that Deku was the one who found the headless corpses of the terrorist group and apprehended Hammerhead. Yes. A skilled assassin who goes by the name Speedo Sound Sonic was responsible for the massacre and has only been recently incarcerated in Smelly Lid Prison, thanks to Deku himself, answered Sekengar with a nod. That's good and all, but what have we heard about City Z? I've heard repeated rumblings of a potential disaster brewing somewhere in the abandoned area, asked a concerned executive, having heard of how monsters seem to be appearing more often in City Z. No reports available. However, 2 highly capable Class A heroes have been sent to investigate, so we should get to the bottom of these rumors soon, answered bespectacled worker, having been the one to assign Golden Ball and Spring Mustachio to lead the investigation. City Z, Deku's apartment. And that bastard claimed I couldn't handle it, moaned Tatsumaki, having gone to Deku's apartment to complain about what had happened at the Hero Association headquarters. The S-Class Rank 2 hero was lying on Izuku's couch, kicking her legs up and down like a child who was throwing a tantrum. Sitting on a chair across from her, Izuku silently nodded his head while sipping from his teacup. He learned a long time ago to just nod his head in agreement whenever Tatsumaki got into one of her moods. Both heroes heard their phones suddenly ding, indicating an alert from the Hero Association. Both Izuku and Tatsumaki took out their phones and read the alert message. Hero backup request in the ghost town of City Z, Class A rank 29. Golden Ball has been knocked out in Class A rank 33. Spring Mustachio is in trouble. The threat is Tiger level or above. Huh. I knew they should have sent me instead of those weakling, exclaimed Tatsumaki with a victorious glare. Drinking the remains of his tea in one go, Izuku placed the cup down and stood up before he moved to leave his apartment. His apartment was on the outskirts of the ghost town, so it'll take him no time at all to get to the hero's location. You coming? Tatsumaki levitated herself off the couch and followed Izuku out of the apartment, noting how he didn't bother to change into his hero costume and left while wearing a sleeveless green tank top and gray sweatpants. Once the duo was outside, both glowed green with their respective powers and then bolted into the sky while heading in the direction of Spring Mustachio's last known location. 1 second later, both S-Class heroes arrived in the ghost town, and they could hear the sound of steel hitting steel. Both heroes flew in the direction of the noise and stopped in the air once they spotted Spring Mustachio, who they saw was deflecting the monster's swinging hair, which looked to be made of kombu. Only the kombu seemed to be strong as steel, as shown when it managed to easily cut through a concrete wall when it missed the A-Class hero. This is the monster that's been causing so much trouble? Pathetic, scoffed Tatsumaki, who folded her arms while looking down on both the monster and the A-Class heroes. No time for that, Tatsu. Looks like Spring Mustachio needs assistance, remarked Deku. Spring Mustachio was putting up one hell of a fight against the monster, but the A-Class hero could only block or dodge so many of the monster's many steel-like kombu tentacles. Even now, some kombu was getting through Spring Mustachio's defense and leaving cuts across the hero's nice suit and some on his body. Whatever. Let's just deal with this and get out of here, told Tatsumaki, who lazily pointed her arm at the monster, just as it launched 10 of its kombu tentacles at the exhausted Spring Mustachio all at once. Just as the A-Class hero was about to be overwhelmed, the monster and all of its kombu froze in place, thanks to Tatsumaki, who was using her psychokinesis on the mysterious being. This surprised both the monster and Spring Mustachio, but before either could question it, Tatsumaki clenched her fist, using her psychokinesis to squeeze the monster. The monster couldn't even resist as it was squeezed into a ball of torn flesh, broken bones, and ripped kombu. Watching Tatsumaki easily kill the strong monster with barely any effort reminded Deku how terrifyingly powerful she was. Even All Might in his prime couldn't hold a candle to her. Deku lowered himself down to Spring Mustachio's side, causing the A-Class hero to jump away in fright and raise his rapier, thinking that it was another monster. Izuku raised his arms to calm the hero down. Calm yourself, Spring Mustachio. We're the good guys, said Deku, placating the A-Class rank 33 hero. Spring Mustachio is a lean-built man with short black hair, combed to the left side with curled sideburns, yellow eyes with several wrinkles on the bottom of his face, and a thick handlebar mustache. He is shown to wear a dark green suit and pants with a white collared shirt and a red bow tie. Although his clothing was ruined during his fight with the monster, now covered in cuts and blood. Realizing that there was no other monster, and that the ones who saved him were none other than the top 2 heroes, Deku and Tornado of Terror, Spring Mustachio put away his rapier and bowed in apology. Apologies for that. You caught me unaware, but thank you for coming. I was afraid I wouldn't last much longer against such a beast, said Spring Mustachio, sounding as exhausted as he looked. Deku chuckled with a smile and patted the A-Class hero on his shoulder. You did good, so don't beat yourself up about it. The moment Izuku's hand touched Spring Mustachio, The A-class hero lost the remaining strength in his legs and toppled over. Spring Mustachio would have fallen on the floor if not for Deku catching him at the last second. "We better get you to the hospital," said Deku before hoisting the hero over his shoulder. Once Spring Mustachio was secured, Deku walked over to the unconscious form of Golden Ball and carefully placed him on his back along the road. After patting the unconscious A-class hero down to check his injuries, Deku stood back up. Golden Ball has a cracked rib, likely a concussion, and his right arm is broken. Nothing life-threatening, but we still need to get him to the hospital. Golden Ball is a tall man with blonde hair and a brown goatee. He has on a pair of baggy pants, a hoodie underneath a letterman's jacket, and a white beanie. His jacket has Golden Ball printed on its back. Deku carefully picked up the unconscious Golden Ball and placed him over his other shoulder before looking up at Tatsumaki, who was still floating above them. "You coming, Tatsu?" Deku got his answer when Tatsumaki turned her head aside in an arrogant manner before she flew off in a green blur. Deku simply laughed. I guess that was a no. In one of the many apartment buildings in City M, two S-class heroes could be found playing a video game of all things. Civilians wouldn't believe that two S-class heroes would spend their free time playing video games of all things. They would be especially shocked to discover that the two Class S heroes in question were the S-class rank 6, King, and S-class rank 1, Deku. Yet, that was exactly what was happening in King's apartment, as both S-class heroes were currently battling it out in a fighting video game. Sitting side by side on the floor in front of King's television, both men were pressing the buttons on their controllers rapidly, although Izuku was doing so in a more flustered state. Unlike King, who was as cool as a cucumber, King was a tall, lean man with light tan skin, blue eyes, and shoulder-length, slicked-back blonde hair combed down to the nape of his neck. He had a long face with sunken cheeks and a well-defined jawline. His most noticeable feature was the set of 3 vertical scars over his left eye. "I've got you now," declared Izuku with a wide grin, pressing a combination of buttons on his controller that made his player character use their super move. With King's character's health so low, the special move will be more than enough to win the game. If Izuku was playing against someone else, he might have won. But he was up against King, the god of video games. With just 2 fingers, King pressed a series of buttons on his controller, making his character counter Izuku's own at the last second before he could unleash his special move. This left Izuku's character at the mercy of King, who used a combo move to remove the rest of Izuku's character's life bar, ending the match in another victory for King. "No!" cried Izuku in disbelief. "But I was so close." King decided not to tell Izuku that he was holding back to give him a better chance. "That makes it 81-0 to me, doesn't it?" Izuku refused to answer, simply dropping his controller and looking down at his crossed legs in defeat. How is he so good at playing video games? He wondered as he stewed in defeat once more. With it being Sunday, Izuku went to King's apartment for their weekly video game matches, and just like every other time, he lost. In the eyes of everyone, Izuku Midoriya is the strongest man in the world, but it was believed that King was the only other hero who could match him in sheer physical might. Everyone believed the two heroes were fated rivals, with King being the only man alive who was capable of taking Izuku's title as the world's strongest man. The world believed a lie. The truth of the matter was that King wasn't Izuku's rival. Yes, they were friends, but King couldn't be Izuku's rival because he was just a civilian who unintentionally gained the credit for some of Izuku's heroic acts during his time as a vigilante years ago. King never wanted the credit, but before he could even open his mouth to deny his accomplishments, he was already made an S-class hero by the Hero Association and given the title of rival to Deku. Izuku still found it hard to believe that the Hero Association was so quick to jump the gun and named King an S-class hero, especially without witnessing him defeat a single mysterious being. Usually, Izuku wouldn't allow a civilian to be made a hero, especially a Class S hero, without any sort of training or skill, but it turned out that King did have some useful skills of his own. Other than his incredible skills at playing video games, King had the luck of the gods. Izuku had never seen someone get out of enough tight spots like King had, and that was because of his sheer dumb luck, as well as another important factor. For someone as weak as he was, King had a surprisingly overwhelming presence which often intimidated all his foes from backing down, no matter if they were assassins or monsters. For nearly 3 years, King was an S-class hero who had gone up against dozens of opponents, both human and monster, with him defeating them all with just his sheer overwhelming presence alone. Such a feat only proved to the world how powerful he truly was. Seeing as how King could handle himself, even without fighting, Izuku decided to not reveal the truth about King, although he did warn King to stay away from demon and dragon level threats. Strong, mysterious beings were more likely to try and fight King and ignore his overwhelming presence. Another reason why Izuku didn't reveal the truth about King was that it would not only ruin King's life, but also make the entire world look foolish, especially the Hero Association. If the world found out that the Hero Association promoted a weak civilian to S-class because of miscommunication, it would make the public lose faith in the Hero Association. With powerful monsters causing havoc every so often, the last thing the people needed was to lose faith in the Hero Association, which was quite literally the first and last defense against the constant threat of mysterious beings. That, and Izuku was pretty sure Tatsumaki would kill King out of pure spite alone. As Izuku grumbled over his defeat, much to King's amusement, he felt his phone buzz in one of his costume pockets. After taking the device out, Izuku got serious once he saw that it was a call from the Hero Association. Answering the call, Izuku placed the phone to his ear. "This is Deku." "Deku, thank God you answered. We've got a serious problem. The threat level is dragon," exclaimed bearded worker from the other side of the phone call, sounding frantic. In an instant, Izuku jumped up to his feet, startling King beside him. "Which city is the threat in?" "The threat isn't in any of the cities. At least, it isn't yet." "What do you mean?" asked Izuku, hoping to get an explanation and fast. Dragon-level threats were no joke after all. A large meteor has just shifted course and is now heading straight for City Z. Within the hour, City Z will be destroyed and all the nearby cities will be severely damaged as well. We've asked for any nearby S-class heroes to try and do something about it. Izuku widened his eyes and ran over to the closest window to poke his head out. Just as bearded worker said, he could see a falling meteor in the sky, glowing red from the intense heat caused by friction. King decided to look out the window as well to see what Izuku was looking at, and once he saw the meteor, King broke out into a nervous sweat. "Have you started evacuating City Z and the nearby cities?" asked Izuku while keeping his attention on the glowing red meteor. "The top brass want us to send out the warning 30 minutes before the impact," answered bearded worker, having disagreed with the executive's orders to delay the warning. They might not be able to safely evacuate everyone within the hour, but they would get more people out of the blast radius in an hour than they would within half that time. "Ignore that order and begin the evacuation of the civilians from City Z and all nearby cities. I will see about dealing with the meteor," told Izuku, dismissing the orders of his superiors. Bearded worker was more than happy to follow Deku's orders. If the Hero Association executives have a problem with that, they can bring it up with the hero themselves. "I will do that at once." "Thank you, Deku." Izuku hung up and pocketed his phone before stepping out of the window and used float to keep himself floating in midair by King's window. King watched Deku, seemingly a bit worried, not for himself, but for the people in City Z who were in danger of being completely wiped out. "Can you deal with that?" he asked, glancing up at the meteor for a second. Sure. He knew Izuku was powerful, but was he strong enough to stop a falling meteor? Deku turned around and, with a carefree smile, shrugged his shoulders. "Guess we'll find out, won't we?" he remarked before he flooded his body with the power of One for All. Glowing in emerald lightning, Deku propelled himself high enough in the sky so he didn't risk hitting any high-rise buildings before he disappeared in a green blur, breaking the sound barrier several times as he flew towards City Z. Since City M was on the complete opposite side of the landmass to City Z, Deku will need to pick up speed to get there in time to stop the meteor. City Z. Genos jumped from rooftop to rooftop with a black suitcase in hand. The cyborg intended to find the tallest building in City Z, so he could get the best vantage point to try and stop the meteor. "I did not expect to be testing this prototype so soon," thought Genos, pressing a button on the suitcase handle as he jumped to another rooftop. The suitcase was revealed to be a new prototype for Genos to enhance his power as it flew off before transforming into a pair of mechanical arms that clasped over Genos's arms. The new arms were bulkier and black in color. Upon clasping over Genos's arms, metal parts ran up the cyborg's shoulder and pieces of metal framed the sides of his face. Genos landed on top of a rooftop, intending to stop the meteor by using his incineration cannons that were now enhanced with his new arms mode. Just as he was about to attempt it, his sensors detected something fast heading in his direction. Genos looked up as something large flew over his head. "What is that?" muttered a puzzled Genos. The large flying object happened to be a battle robot, created and operated by the S-Class Rank 7 hero, Metal Knight. The battle robot quickly landed on a nearby rooftop and did so with a grace one wouldn't expect from such a large robot. The battle robot was bulky in size and quite intimidating to look at, especially with the large cannons on its back. It had a distinct set of 3 circular marks on its face and a yellow hazard triangle on its back. "You are Beaufoy, correct?" asked Genos, having jumped up to the same rooftop as the battle robot to speak with the hero inside it. The battle robot looked over its shoulder to address Genos. "And you are the new boy, Genos," remarked Metal Knight. "Have you come to stop the meteor?" "Yes," answered Genos while studying the battle robot. Class S Rank 7 uses intense firepower to obliterate opponents along with everything in their vicinity. Does he also live in City Z, or did he rush here, putting his life at risk? He thought, feeling a lot more confident now that another S-Class hero arrived to help destroy the meteor. "Bofoy, I am in need of your assistance." "I refuse." Metal Knight's rejection to help each other caught Genos off guard. "Why is that?" "I only answered the call to field test my new weapon." "The meteor is a perfect target," explained Metal Knight without shame. "Field test?" repeated Genos with a slight glare. "If that meteor hits, you will die too?" Before Metal Knight could explain, someone else interrupted the conversation. "Metal Knight won't die because he isn't here. What you're talking to is just one of Metal Knight's mini robots," explained Deku, who was standing on the same rooftop as Genos and Metal Knight's battle robot. Both Genos and Metal Knight turned to Deku in surprise. Neither of their sensors detected him close by, nor that he was standing right behind them. "By the way, when on the job, you speak to others using their hero names, not their real ones," Genos told Deku, knowing that it was a common mistake among rookies. People preferred to keep their normal lives separate from their hero careers. "Ah, Deku, you have come to stop the meteor as well," said Metal Knight as more as a statement than a question. Of all the S-Class heroes who were called to try and stop the meteor, he predicted a 100% possibility that Deku would arrive. "Well, it is my job after all. I wasn't going to sit back and let a meteor destroy City Z and kill millions in the process," answered Deku while he looked up at the sky where the meteor hung overhead. At this point, the meteor looked like a large miniature red sun in the sky, and with every second that passed, it got ever so closer to the planet. "Could you perhaps wait a moment? I must test out my latest weapon, and the meteor makes for a perfect target," asked Metal Knight, who got his answer when Deku looked at the battle robot with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "No, I will not wait for you to test your new weapon, Metal Knight. I plan to destroy the meteor, and yourself, Genos, and Silverfang are gonna help defend the city once I do so," told Deku in a tone that warned Metal Knight not to question him if he knew what was good for him. Izuku never liked to threaten, but when there were powerful S-Class heroes like Metal Knight who thought they could do whatever they wanted because of their power and rank status, someone had to be there to keep them all in line. "Silverfang?" muttered Genos, having briefly met the S-Class Rank 3 hero before he went off to try and destroy the meteor. The cyborg looked around and found the elderly hero standing behind them with an amused smile on his wrinkled face. "My sensors couldn't detect him either," thought Genos, noting that Silverfang managed to get onto the same rooftop as him without his sensors detecting his presence. Either his sensors were on the fritz, or Deku and Silverfang were a lot stealthier than he would have thought. The battle robot's 3 eyes glowed a threatening red. "Just because you are the #1 hero doesn't mean I am inclined to follow your orders," Deku retorted Metal Knight, sounding unhappy with not getting what he wanted. Being the S-Class Rank 7 hero and main benefactor to the Hero Association, there was very little that Metal Knight couldn't get away with. Being told that he couldn't test his weapon on the meteor by Deku was both new and annoying. Metal Knight's words made Deku's smile drop, and the hero stared deep into the eyes of the battle robot, making Metal Knight, who was hidden in a secret location, unconsciously gulp. "You will either help me destroy the meteor, or I will personally send your robot back to you as a rolled-up ball of scrap metal. Your choice, Metal Knight." After a moment of tense silence, the battle robot's head nodded. "Very well," answered Metal Knight in resignation. As much as the scientist didn't like to be ordered around, he couldn't very well make an enemy out of Deku, especially with his favorite robot on the line. "What's your plan? And could you explain it quickly?" "The meteor is getting awfully close," informed Silverfang, who stared at the meteor that was minutes away from making impact with City Z. "If that happened, they'd all die. Or at least, everyone but Metal Knight would die." Deku nodded and activated Full Cowl, lighting himself up with green energy and emerald lightning. "I plan to destroy the meteor, but when I do, it will likely shatter into smaller pieces that could cause just as much damage to City Z if not stopped. I want you 3 to do whatever you can to destroy as many of the broken pieces of the meteor before they can hit the city." So it looks like I still get to test out my new weapon after all," said Metal Knight, sounding a lot more chipper. The hero would have preferred to test his weapon against the intact meteor, but being able to use them on the shattered pieces of the meteor will just have to do. "Sounds fine by me," agreed Silverfang. Genos looked at Deku for a moment before gazing up at the meteor. He knew that his sensei was monstrously powerful, as his title as world's strongest man would detail, but he was not sure if even Deku could stop the meteor on his own. Sensei, are you sure you can destroy the meteor by yourself? Deku shrugged his shoulders. Maybe. Haven't tried it before, so I'm not entirely sure, but I will give it my all to make sure it doesn't land on City Z. So he's going to use his full power? This will be a perfect opportunity to gauge how powerful Deku truly is, thought Metal Knight, having never witnessed Deku use his full power before. He heard rumors that he once fought the Tornado of Terror to a standstill, and if those rumors were true, then that spoke volumes of how terrifyingly powerful Deku must be, seeing as Tatsumaki was the most powerful Esper in the world and likely the only other hero who could stop the meteor, himself not included. Deku focused his full attention on the meteor, which was far too close to his liking. Let's do this! He roared, and with a jump that left large cracks on the rooftop, Deku launched himself into the sky. To those watching from the surface, they saw what looked like a glowing green star heading straight for the meteor. Once he was close enough to feel the heat coming off the falling meteor, Deku canceled out his full cowl technique and instead focused the entirety of One for All into his right arm. Red veins stretched out along Deku's muscular arm, which bulged with power. Deku's right glove disintegrated, leaving the arm completely bare as he pulled it back for one hell of a punch. With a battle cry that was heard throughout City Z, Deku punched the meteor. Those who watched all gaped in amazement as the falling meteor suddenly stopped its descent. For what felt like minutes when it was just a few seconds, the meteor remained still in the sky with Deku's fist pressing into it, being the only thing keeping it from plummeting down on City Z. All of a sudden, Deku's fist broke a hole in the meteor which he entered. The moment Deku flew into the meteor, large cracks that were emitting a green glow quickly stretched across the entirety of the meteor, all within a matter of seconds. It was only when Deku popped out the other side of the meteor did the large space rock explode in a large explosion of green and red energy which lit up the sky. The colors made from the destruction of the meteor were breathtaking to behold, but it also led to the meteor shattering into smaller, numerous pieces. Unfortunately, those shattered pieces were each the size of a skyscraper, and dozens of them fell back down to City Z at a much faster rate. Firing missiles, called Metal Knight, who aimed his battle robot's cannons at a few of the falling meteors before firing. The missiles each hit their respective meteor and lit up the sky upon detonation, destroying several meteors in one go in a series of mass explosions. Genos opted to fire concentrated blasts from his incineration cannons to destroy the closest meteors he could spot. The cyborg managed to incinerate over half a dozen meteors by himself. Silver Fong jumped across buildings and used his martial arts mastery to destroy any meteor he could get to. Even now, Silver Fong jumped off a building and performed a technique that smashed through a falling meteor, shattering it into harmless little pieces. Even with all four of us working together, there are still some that are getting through, thought Silver Fong, having noticed that a few meteors managed to get past the heroes and cause some damage to the city. Within moments, the meteors stopped falling, having either been destroyed by the S-Class heroes or hit City Z, causing some damage in the process. All four S-Class heroes reunited on a nearby rooftop with Deku floating back down with nearly half of his hero costume missing. Well, I can cross punching a falling meteor off my bucket list now, laughed Deku with Silver Fong chuckling together with him. Several meteors managed to get by us, but the damage done to the city appears to be minimal, especially when compared to what would have happened if the whole meteor had hit, told Metal Knight, knowing that City Z would just be a massive crater if the meteor had landed. Luckily, the surrounding area had been evacuated earlier, remarked Silver Fong, sharing a knowing glance with Deku. If Deku hadn't gotten the evacuation alert sent earlier, there would have definitely been casualties, thought the master martial artist. The top brass of the Hero Association could have gotten a lot of people killed if it wasn't for Deku's quick thinking. We're not finished yet. The meteors that hit City Z have broken out into fire, said Genos, using his scanners to count the fires. The cyborg counted 7 of them. I'll call the nearest fire departments and inform them of the situation, told Metal Knight. No need for that, Metal Knight. I will deal with the fires, said Deku, who walked to the edge of the rooftop where smoke could be seen rising in 7 different locations across City Z. You have a way to battle the fires? Can you spray water out of your hands now? Asked Silver Fong, sounding somewhat genuine. Deku could summon whips of dark energy from anywhere on his body, fly, and destroy mountains with one punch. If Deku was to say that he could spray water as well, Silver Fong would very much believe him. Deku laughed. Of course not, but I've got the next best thing, he answered before he held his hands out, focusing 10% of One for All's power into each of his hands which sparkled with emerald lightning. Deku clapped his hands once. The resulting impact released a powerful gust of wind outwards that traveled across the city like an expanding bubble. Behind Deku, Genos, Silver Fang, and even Metal Knight hunker themselves down to not be blown away by the powerful winds. The heavy wind blew across the empty city, shaking abandoned vehicles, rattling windows, and most importantly, blowing out the fires across the city. With a clap of his hands, he managed to blow out 7 different fires across City Z in a near instant and did so without causing any further damage to the city, thought Metal Knight, watching the event from the cameras attached to his battle robot. Not only does he possess overwhelmingly monstrous power, but he can control it with such incredible precision. I can see why nobody has been able to take his S-Class rank 1 status from him these past 3 years. As Genos gaped in amazement, Silver Fang laughed. I shouldn't be surprised, and yet, I still am. City J. Once everything settled down, the Hero Association was quick to label the meteor as a dragon-level threat, seeing as it would have annihilated City Z and damaged nearby cities if it had made an impact. That was why the 4 S-Class heroes who played a part in stopping the meteor were highly praised for their actions by both the association and the general public. The Hero Association was especially grateful and made sure to show it by offering promotions to the heroes. Metal Knight was promoted to S-Class rank 6 whilst Genos was promoted to S-Class rank 16. Deku was already the highest-ranked hero in the world, so he couldn't rise any higher, although he did manage to beat Sweet Mask as the most popular hero this week. Silver Fang was also offered a promotion, but he rejected it because of concerns for his health. Tornado of Terror wouldn't like it if her position behind Deku was suddenly taken away, which would draw her ire. Bang might be the world's greatest martial artist, but he didn't like his chances if he were to go up against the Esper. He'd like to avoid that possibility if he could, hence why he rejected the promotion. Yet, despite saving City Z and millions from total destruction, the world moved on and a new threat to humanity emerged from the shadows. Not even a week later, Izuku found himself facing off against a new threat, the clan of the Sea Folk. Deku was patrolling City J when he caught sight of something large and ominous stepping out of the ocean. As Deku predicted, the large and ominous sight turned out to be a mysterious being that looked like a bipedal octopus-shaped monster that was wearing a white toga of all things. Ha ha ha. Humans, if you wish to be spared annihilation, take heed. I bear a message from the depths, bellowed the mysterious being. None of the citizens stayed around to listen to the monster as they all ran away in fear. The messenger of the Sea Folk either didn't notice or care and continued. You will surrender the surface to us, the clan of the Sea Folk. Thereafter, you shall become our nourishment, bipedal human scum, declared the Sea Folk in arrogance, before he noticed one of the humans walking towards him, not running away like the others were. The messenger of the Sea Folk was more interested in the human's messy green hair, which reminded him of seaweed. Nice head. Are you related to seaweed by any chance? Asked the Sea Folk before he laughed loudly at his own joke. It's Deku. Deku came to defeat the monster. Our hero. Similar relieved and encouraging shouts were echoed by nearby civilians who stopped fleeing to watch the world's strongest man defeat the monster. The shouts weren't ignored by the messenger of the Sea Folk, who looked at the civilians curiously before turning back to the muscular human before him. So you're one of those useless heroes that protect the surface world? If that's so, I am not impressed, told the monster before he started laughing obnoxiously again. Deku stopped before the monster and looked it up and down. Since danger sense wasn't flaring, then that meant the monster wasn't a threat to him, so it's likely a tiger-level threat or lower. You're from the clan of the Sea Folk? Does that mean there's more of you? Deku asked, having listened to the monster as he gave his so-called message. That there are, and they will all be coming to take back the surface world from you stupid monkeys, declared the messenger, loudly and proudly. Then we'll just have to prepare for their arrival. Before the messenger of the Sea Folk could reply, he suddenly found himself without the top half of his body, courtesy of Deku, who held up his steaming fist, having killed the tiger-level threat with a single punch. I'll have to inform the Hero Association about this. Within the crowd of civilians who all stare in awe, Mumin Rider watched Deku with the same kind of awe as everyone else. After informing the Hero Association about the impending threat from the clan of the Sea Folk, Deku flew off to continue his patrol throughout the cities, believing that the attack wouldn't happen on the same day that they sent a messenger. Deku was dead wrong. It turned out that the Hero Association didn't have a lot of time to prepare for the threat, since the Sea Folk launched their attack mere hours after they sent their messenger. It could be because their messenger never returned, or maybe they just lost their patience. But within moments, a large wave from the ocean slammed into the edge of City J, and with the wave came the Sea Folk. Civilians screamed in terror at the sight of around a dozen seafolk monsters who were causing havoc across the edge of City J. An unlucky civilian found himself caught in one of the monster's tentacles. We, the clan of the seafolk, now rule the surface, humans. It's useless to resist, declared the seafolk who was holding the civilian in one of his yellow tentacles. Before he could squeeze the life out of the human, the monster flinched in pain when the tentacle holding the human was suddenly cut off. All the surrounding seafolk turned their attention on the one responsible, who so happened to be a young hero with spiky black hair, adorning a black suit made out of black bandages and wielding a spear. After cutting off the monster's tentacle and saving the civilian who ran away once free, the hero landed on top of a nearby car. Don't worry, the Class A hero, Stinger, is here, announced the Class A Rank 11 hero, Stinger, who skillfully spun his spear, bamboo shoot. It's Stinger. Now we're safe, said a civilian in relief. Show him who's boss, Stinger, shouted a woman in encouragement. You'll pay for that, human, threatened the mysterious being as he and his seafolk brethren surrounded the A-class hero. Even with all the large and intimidating monsters surrounding him, Stinger faced off against them confidently. Listen up, fish. Whoever needs a new blowhole drilled into their torso, step right up, said Stinger, spinning his spear before pointing it at the group of seafolk. One of the seafolk narrowed his eyes at the insufferable human. Big talk from a lone human. You are severely outnumbered. Do you think you can handle all of us on your own? Stinger smirked at the seafolk monster who spoke. Who says I'm alone? One of the seafolk monsters caught sight of movement at the edge of his vision and turned to see what it was, only to suddenly find his head sliced off from his body. All but one of the seafolk were surprised by the death of one of their own and turned to see another human walking towards them with a weapon in hand. But instead of a spear like Stinger's, the new hero was wielding a katana. The newly arrived hero is a young man with dark hair that arcs upwards and splits at the neck with hairpins on each side of his head. The hero wears a long-sleeved sweater and a long dress and has a large on both of his cheeks. The hero is A-class rank 3, Okametachi, a student of the S-class rank 4 hero, Atomic Samurai. So Deku was correct about the invasion from Seafolk, spoke Okametachi, who had been nearby in City K when he got a call from the Hero Association about an impending invasion from Seafolk. Usually, he wouldn't believe such crap without evidence, but he was told that Deku was the one who learned of the invasion, which was all the proof Okametachi needed to come to City J's defense. Although, it's not much of an invasion, is it? There's only 10 of them. The swordsman's frown deepened as he took a closer look at the monsters. And there's not even a single cute one among them. How disappointing. Stinger glanced at his fellow hero strangely, before focusing his attention back on the seafolk. Right, let's do this. Arrogant humans, roared a seafolk who raised its large right arm to drop down on Stinger, but the monster roared in pain when he found his arm no longer connected to his shoulder, having been cleanly cut through like a hot knife to butter. What? Okametachi pulled his sword back for another swing. Too slow, exclaimed the swordsman before he swung his sword again, using a technique taught to him by his sensei. Air blade, announced the hero, swinging his sword with enough strength and precision to cut through the air itself. This resulted in a large blade of wind being created which flew at the seafolk, slicing through his stomach and bisecting the monster into 2 separate pieces. The same occurred to the seafolk monster behind him as the blade of wind continued cutting and bisecting another in half. I can't let you have all the fun, remarked Stinger, who jumped and spun his spear over his head so fast that it managed to make the hero fly upwards. Stop him, roared one for the seafolk, having now realized that the humans weren't as weak as they first thought them to be. 4 of the seafolk monsters attacked Stinger, either with their tentacles or claws, but the A-class hero was a lot faster than them. Gigantic drill Stinger. Quadruple thrust. Faster than the seafolk could react, Stinger thrust his spear at all of them, targeting vital areas on their bodies. The spinning spearhead of Stinger's bamboo shoot easily killed each of the 4 seafolk monsters in one blow, having punctured a large hole in each of their bodies. Okametachi, who had been watching, nodded his head in approval. He's only been a hero for 6 months, but I can see how he has managed to rise up the ranks so quickly. Stinger's quite skilled. Not bad to look at either, thought the A-class rank 3 hero who felt the wind shift slightly. The shift in the wind was because one of the few remaining seafolk monsters attempted to attack him when he wasn't looking, but unfortunately for the monster, Okametachi didn't need to look at his opponent to know where they were. The seafolk monster, which looked like an oversized crab, swung his massive claw towards Okametachi, but the hero jumped over the claw and prepared to swing his katana while he was still in the air above the monster. Okametachi reappeared behind the crab-like monster in a blur, standing on one knee with his katana blade out, having completed his attack. For a moment, neither the hero nor Seafolk moved until a line stretched from the top of the Seafolk's head to the bottom of its large body. The Seafolk monster collapsed into two perfectly even pieces, courtesy of Okametachi, who sliced the monster in half with a single vertical cut. At the same time, Stinger finished drilling his bamboo shoot through the skulls of the other Seafolk monsters. Sweaty, but victorious, Stinger gripped his spear tightly in excitement. We did it. We beat those bastards. These monsters were probably a god-level threat, and we defeated them. Is he serious? These guys were a tiger-level threat, if barely, thought Okametachi, having suddenly lost a bit of respect for his fellow A-class hero. To be fair, Stinger was only a hero for 6 months now, so he was still new compared to most. But even he should realize that facing something considered a god-level threat would require more than 2 Class A heroes. Before Okametachi could scold Stinger, he widened his eyes in surprise when a Seafolk monster suddenly appeared before Stinger and punched him in the stomach. I didn't even see him move, thought the A-class rank 3 hero, having thought that all the Seafolk monsters were killed, but apparently one had managed to escape detection. You know, when something is so annoying, watching it die is a pleasure, said the Seafolk, glaring down at the unconscious Stinger who was being held up off the ground by the monster's large fist. This one isn't like the rest of the Seafolk, thought Okametachi, holding his katana out in front of him while watching for the monster's next move. Stinger may be a recent hero, but he was still considered a strong A-class hero, so the fact that the Seafolk monster managed to defeat him with one punch spoke volumes of the monster's strength. Who are you? Oh, muttered the Seafolk, turning to Okametachi. That's right, there were 2 of you apes together. Not just this one, said the monster who tossed Stinger aside as if he was nothing but trash. Stinger's unconscious body collided with the side of an abandoned van, denting the metal and causing it to skid across the road until it hit a wall that stopped it but cracked from the force. The civilians had already fled the area once the fighting started, so there was no chance of them getting in the way. As for my name, I am the Deep Sea King, ruler of the Seafolk, and I hereby claim my right to rule the surface. Do you dare to defy me, human? Asked the now-revealed Deep Sea King, staring at Okametachi with a playful smile. The Deep Sea King is the most humanoid of all the Seafolk Okametachi had seen today, being a large muscular being with green skin on his arms, legs, and back with light skin on his chest. He also has sharp eyes, large fangs, and fins protruding from the sides of his head. The monster's attire consists of a red speedo, an ornate crown, and a large fur-trimmed cape. Overall, he looked kingly and was much easier on the eyes than the other Seafolk. But Okametachi kept his guard up. Okametachi studied the Deep Sea King's appearance, looking for any weaknesses that could be exploited, but clenched his teeth in frustration. He's just standing there, but I can't find any openings. Are you not going to attack? Asked the Deep Sea King curiously, before a bloodthirsty grin emerged on his face. Very well, I'll start things off. Within the blink of an eye, Deep Sea King ran the distance between him and Okametachi while throwing a powerful punch straight at the hero's face. Okametachi tilted his head to the side and just barely avoided the punch, although he did feel the skin on his right cheek heat up from the friction of the monster's punch as it sailed by. With the monster so close, Okametachi swung his sword straight at the monster's neck at blinding speeds, hoping to end the fight then and there. However, much like how he did before, Deep Sea King tilted his head back to barely avoid the swinging sword, and while he avoided getting his head chopped off, the monster felt the sword nick his neck. Deep Sea King stepped back to touch his neck, and then looked at his fingers to see blood. You spilled first blood. Impressive. For a dirty ape, chuckled the king of the Seafolk as the cut on his neck healed itself within a few seconds. Okametachi didn't bother with saying anything and instead started swinging his katana at the monster with speeds that most A-class heroes couldn't even comprehend. While he and his fellow disciples of Atomic Samurai were all at the top of the Class A rankings, they were considered by both Atomic Samurai and Child Emperor to be low S-class level in strength, and would have been placed in S-class a long time ago, if not for Sweet Mask's gatekeeping. They might be strong enough to be considered S-class, but Sweet Mask was a monster on a whole different level. Yet, even with his swordsmanship skills which are considered to be S-class level, the Deep Sea King had no problem dodging his blinding katana strikes, moving far faster than a creature of his size should be capable of. What's worse, he was doing so with a smug grin on his face, showing that he wasn't even trying. This is no tiger-level threat. This guy is definitely demon level, thought Okametachi, having stopped his swinging and taken a few steps away from the monster to gain some distance for his next attack. The swordsman then swung his katana with all his strength in the direction of Deep Sea King. Air Blade, he called out, unleashing a powerful blade of wind at the monster at intense speeds. How amusing! Okametachi suddenly spun at a 180 turn, while swinging his katana at the Deep Sea King who he sensed was standing right behind him, having dodged his air blade attack and appeared behind him in a near instant. However, the swordsman's swing was stopped by the Deep Sea King, who used both hands to grab onto his wrists. The A-class hero tried to fight off the monster's hold on him, but his strength proved to be too weak compared to the Deep Sea King's. Just when the swordsman was about to throw a kick at the monster's smug face, he cried out when he felt his wrists get crushed under the Deep Sea King's grip. If all the other apes are as weak as you, I guess I won't have any bother taking the surface world, chuckled the Deep Sea King, enjoying the sadistic pleasure he got for breaking the human's wrists. Now if you'll excuse me, I've got a surface world to take over. Deep Sea King reeled back his right arm and punched Okametachi in the chest, landing the blow with no struggle. Okametachi coughed up blood as he launched straight through several nearby houses before his body eventually stopped after the seventh house, having become buried under the rubble of the building with his head just barely sticking out. Even still, Okametachi was conscious for a moment, struggling to free himself of the rubble to continue the fight before he lost his remaining strength and succumbed to his wounds, falling unconscious. Now then, Deep Sea King turned towards the direction of the city where he could see all the tall towers. Let's see what else the humans have in store for me. On 100 likes, part 2 will be uploaded. For now, you guys can watch this video,